Talk about something, our first issue of my podcast ever, which is something that kind of makes me feel like the world is perfect. So I'm going to ask you this question. Because you know who Khia is, right? Because Khia is like...
Yes, I do.
Yeah, like my favorite rapper, the famous artist who has rapped the UK top 3 hit, My Neck, My Back, which is, if you guys have not heard this song, you need to, and you're about a decade late because this is the best song. Elizabeth, do you wanna just give them a little sample of it? Can you recite the chorus to this song? I'll help you. I'll help you.
My back. Is that right?
I'll help you. My neck.
I'll take it.
My back.
My back. My pussy and my crack?
Yeah. No, you have to say, lick my.
Oh, lick my. I forgot. I forgot those two.
Oh my God. Okay, we're going to do it again. I didn't even give you that much to memorize, but we're going to try it again, okay? Okay. My neck. My back.
My back. Lick my pussy and my crack.
You have such an uncertain cadence to it. Everybody recognizes that song is the anthem of our generation.
Yes. Well, among women it is, definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, there should be more activities that Khia describes. But anyways,
It's a very female-centric song.
it is a very, absolutely, and that's what I love about these porn rappers. But anyways, so what do Miley Cyrus and Khia have in common? Well, they had nothing in common up until today, when I found out that Khia will be the guest rapper on the remix of Miley Cyrus's great song, We Can't Stop. And I mean, when I read this, just thinking about it now, I feel ecstatic. I feel loved by the universe, really.
Absolutely.
This is going to be mind-blowing. And I know that you saw on Facebook, because I saw that you liked it, I posted the cover.
Yes, absolutely.
The record company did not even bother to make a cover for the remix, but just accepted one that a fan sent in. So this is how high profile this is. And it looks like, if you haven't seen this, because you probably haven't because this is pretty new. Well, I'm talking to our zero audience, so I forget that, but may as well practice. But the photo looks like it's just their heads photoshopped onto bodies.
I know, it's so very specially done.
It looks really shoddy. But but I feel like Miley Cyrus, I mean, she sought Khia out. I feel like she understands Khia's whole aesthetic, which is basically like, ooh, I have a new album coming out. I'm going to put my hair into dreadlocks and bend over and mime doggy style while you take a picture of me. That's her whole look. So it's very funny. I can't wait for this to happen. I mean,
Me too. No, absolutely. I think that Khia will get so much more popularity.
Yes.
She'll be able to be influenced, and a new generation will be open to hearing about her, especially the Miley Cyrus generation.
Yes. I mean, because I would say probably, I mean, I'm a huge Miley Cyrus fan, but I'd say we're both probably much older than most Miley Cyrus fans. So this will be good in raising Khia awareness.
Exactly. It's a new generation. The new minds can be opened up
to Khia's greatness. So this is nothing but good news. I thought it would be great if we would start out with great news, but I'm highly looking forward to that song. It's going to be good, and hopefully Khia will get a little shot of popularity from it. Okay, we're back. So we're talking about Chris Brown. So what do you guys think about Chris Brown?
I don't like... Yeah, go ahead.
I don't like his music.
That's not what I asked.
I like his music, I don't like him.
I thought before we were filming, you said you don't like his music.
I said I like his music.
Oh.
You said you didn't like his music.
No.
You said you only liked one song.
Okay, whatever. So what were you saying? Sorry.
I mean, I don't like his music. I don't know anything about him except the headline that girlfriend who's now back with him.
Yeah,
But if she forgave him, how are we to say otherwise?
But I think there's such a thing. Well, because we can, and a lot of people, from the outside can view this and say, well, she is a an abused woman caught up in this relationship that is extremely unhealthy, and we have a perspective that she may not. Now, that's not to say that we can't respect Rihanna's decision. We can or we can't.
We weren't there in the limo.
Well, we weren't there in the limo, but we saw the pictures. She was, speaking for me, physical violence is not okay.
We don't know. That's my point.
Well, we don't know. But I don't think that's reason to beat up somebody the way that he did.
You say beat up. Maybe he pushed her away from him and she hit her head on the door handle.
She had a black eye. Let's use our brains here. Do you really think that's what happened? Is she happened to fall onto something?
I think it got out of control and we don't know.
But there is now the possibility that he will be imprisoned because a judge, this is an article from That Grape Juice, the judge is considering revoking his probation following an alleged hit and run. So this probation was put in place after the 2009 assault on Rihanna. But back in May, he was involved in an alleged hit and run in the city of LA. So the district attorney is seeking to revoke the 5-year-long probation that had initially been put on because he fled the scene after this hit and run.
That's perfectly acceptable in that case. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probation means you have to be a good little boy.
Yeah.
And no matter, it's not jaywalking or that, murder, it doesn't matter. Probation is probation.
Yeah, and so he could face 4 years in prison. I just think he's a very trashy person. I have very little respect for him. Because I also think, it's true, like we can't, we weren't in that limo, but we can deduce from other behavior we've seen from him, his outbursts on television shows. He obviously has anger issues, and I believe that it's more than believable that he did beat up Rihanna with rage.
Probably, but again, we don't know. And I know you say, but the perspective of, well, she was an abused woman and we need to help. She did get out of it. They were separate for over a year, I believe.
Yeah.
But she did get out of it, and she chose to go back in. Now, it's not that, I could see an abused woman who's still in it, and yes, we need to protect her, but she was out of it. Yeah. I think she made an informed decision. And it's not like she didn't have resources. She had more money than all of us.
That's true.
She had plenty of resources.
But here's the question. Is a person in an abused relationship, do they have access to their full agency, to their full mind to make decisions? Even if she's away from him for a year, the same thinking mechanics would still be going on, right?
I have been abused. I was in an abusive relationship for 7 years.
Yeah.
A physical and emotionally abusive relationship. I knew I needed to get out. I didn't get out. I kept going back for more and more and more.
Yes. Yes.
Speaking as someone, once I did get out, would I get back into that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I know that the first person who ever raises a hand to me again, no matter who they are or what relationship they are to me, the first person that ever strikes me again will either be dead by my own hand or will go to jail for the rest of their life.
You know what? I have to say I agree with you. So why would Rihanna go back?
Because she loves him.
I think because she loves him, and I think because maybe whatever happened in that limo, she realized she had a part in it. I will admit, in a couple of the instances, more than a couple, where I was physically abused, that I wouldn't say deserve it. There were other ways to handle it, absolutely. But I definitely did not help things. I goaded him and goaded him and goaded him and goaded him, pushing trigger points that I knew would create tension and create.
And that's the mechanics of a.
I poured that gasoline onto the fire.
But that's the mechanics of a. But that's the mechanics of a codependent relationship. But of course, I have to point out, just because you goad someone does not give them the right to beat the shit out of you.
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is, it might have been a highly enraged situation. They each got out of hand, felt bad about it. After having a year's time in distance, that's enough time for, especially someone like her, that she could have easily found a new boyfriend, whatever. I really think that between the two of them, something happened and we don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly valid. And so really, thank you for sharing your experience. What message Like, because you've been through it. So what warning or what message would you give to young women who are in your situation?
You can get out. It's hard as hell. You want to kill yourself sometimes. It's hard as hell, but you can get out. You have to do it one day at a time.
Yes. Yeah, and how to avoid getting into. What are the signs, in your opinion, to look for someone who could become an abuser?
You know, I honestly don't think there are signs to look for. I think,
Really?
you know, I really don't. I think it can, any particular person can have the potential for abuse. I
Yeah.
mean, we are all
Person
animals
triggers
by
it.
nature. It's a matter of control. Can we control ourselves?
Yeah, but Sarah, I disagree with you there, because Sarah was saying something about if you know, it can happen with anyone because you push somebody's buttons, but no, because
little too far.
But if you push person A's buttons, they're not going to become abusive. Not everyone is going to become abusive.
No, it depends on how well they can handle it.
And
Okay.
those are people you need to avoid in life. All the negative bullshit from your life.
Just somebody with low self-control.
That's what I think.
Exactly. I explode and I blow up and I say and do things I regret. We all do.
Yeah, but I don't think that you have the
And it's a
potential
matter
to
of
become abusive.
how we do it. Oh, I can be emotionally abusive. Absolutely.
Huh. So let's talk about Lindsay Lohan. Guys, I'm a big fan of Lindsay Lohan.
Your favorite person.
My favorite person.
Oh my God.
And, well, by the way, I saw my other favorite person. Okay, you know, we talk about Tara Reid.
Terry Hilton?
No, Tara
Oh,
Reid.
Tara Reid.
I know you're not a fan, but guess what? I saw Tara Reid on Bloomberg, of all things, today.
Serious?
Yeah, she was promoting her low-budget shark film. Sharknado, which is like the shark tornado.
Oh, like shark bugs?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Tara Reid is in that. So, but that's not the point. So Lindsay Lohan, my girl, is moving on up in the world. She's out of rehab, and the Oprah Winfrey Network has offered her $2 million to star in an 8-part reality series. So they've been negotiating for 4 months, and the series would detail her struggles, her career, and her plans for the future.
You know, who fucking who? Who would have to get $1 million for my little reality series, or for me to fuck some guy because I have a big chest and have a sex tape and my whole family make $1 gazillion?
I don't think Lindsay Lohan has a sex
People
tape.
need to get live
She does?
reality
I think so.
series on her.
Wait, Lindsay Lohan does not have a sex tape.
No, Kardashian. I'm saying
Oh,
that
yeah.
group of
I think she does, actually.
No. No. I disagree,
sure?
Sarah. Who's her sex tape with?
I don't know. But this is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life.
Why?
I'm sure she'll come out with one with doesn't get $2 million for being out of rehab. Give her 5 years.
As her party?
In the spotlight, she'll do anything.
The tape will be titled Lindsay's Post-Rehab Party.
Who wants to watch Lindsay Lohan's boring, pathetic life?
I don't think she's boring and pathetic, and I would watch it.
Yep. See, and that's the point. People like you give her this money. Wouldn't you rather give that $2 million go to a charity?
Yes, but I'm not in...
Why would you want to watch Lindsay Lohan?
But I'm not in control of that money.
$2 million up the nose of Lindsay Lohan.
But I'm not... and it is going probably up the nose, but I'm not in control of that money.
You are in control of it. If people like you and everybody else who watches her stop,
Oh my God.
then she doesn't get the money.
Why would you watch
That's the
her?
point.
I'm not... No,
That's
I
the point.
disagree.
If we stop watching, if we stop paying attention to these morons,
I don't think she's a
then we
moron. I
have
think
5
she's an
minutes to
addict.
actually look at the news, you know.
Sarah watches the Kardashians, so it's not just me.
But that's different.
It's not different.
They're not.
They are just as
That's a guilty
trashy.
pleasure.
They're trashy.
Okay, would you rather watch Lindsay Lohan
Kim Kardashian
or the
is
Kardashians?
famous. Okay, Lindsay
I have
Lohan
to
is...
admit, I'd rather do Lohan than Kardashian.
Listen,
Sorry, Sarah.
listen to me. Okay, Lindsay
Oh.
Lohan, stop. Lindsay Lohan is famous because she was originally an actress. Kim Kardashian is famous because of her sex tape.
I agree. That's why I would.
But
do
I don't
Lohan
like
over
Kim.
Kardashian.
I don't watch it for
Oh,
Kim.
come on, but you're watching the Kardashian show.
So, it doesn't matter. I don't watch it for Kim.
You're in control of the money, Sarah.
Where the family money comes from?
Yeah, Sarah.
OJ.
I don't have one of those little boxes on my screen to control and tell the world how many views I watch this.
Sarah, just because you don't have a Nelson box doesn't mean you're not wholly responsible for Kim Kardashian's fame.
That is not what I'm saying at all. How can one single person...
I get it, but the thing is, I think what Annika is trying to say is that we play a part because we are in the audience, and I accept that, but I only accept my role as one person. And you know what?
It stops.
You can't stop 3 billion people.
That's the market, though. It's not like we can just stop, I mean, it is going to do what it's going to...
Fantastic scripted TV shows out there.
Okay, but that is your idea of fantastic. Not everyone is looking for the same type of entertainment. There's a different...
Well, I don't know. I think that and what happens is people want to become more like me. I'm pregnant. That's what's going to come. 15 is pregnant. 12 is pregnant. I mean, if I'm, a kid's not so bright. Like, wait a minute. I want to be on that MTV show. Well, if I get pregnant, I'll just be a flat damn. Honey Boo Boo's sister did that.
Pumpkin?
That's her name?
And it gets younger, and we're breeding stupider and stupider
Okay,
people.
but I have to say, me and you have watched Honey Boo Boo.
I know, and I watched to watch you.
What an excuse!
Honey Boo Boo is very
I
funny.
don't watch it.
I know about Honey Boo Boo.
Okay, you guys...
All I know is the soup.
The soup. Yeah, and I've heard about her for the first time from the soup. But I understand your point that, for example, me and Sara play parts in the audience, but at the end of the day, we're not in control of it personally, and the market in this country decides what entertainment products are successful and continue.
But who comprises the market?
All of us.
Consumer. You're a consumer.
But we're
That's
2
what I'm
out of
saying.
3 billion people who watch the show.
The market disappears.
The market never disappears in the United States.
This Kardashian family has had enough money. They've had enough time. Let's go on to the next thing.
But that's trying to put values. That's not going to happen artificially. That will only happen organically when when the demand naturally dries up.
And your friends stop talking about it, and their friends stop talking about it. That's how it goes away. You can't sit by change. Just doesn't happen. You have to affect it.
But see, I don't know, because we're talking about a TV show. I don't think it's very consequential. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I don't think Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't think that an anti-Kim Kardashian campaign is going to grow into anything larger. So obviously you two are not going to be watching this show, I presume. But yeah, so Lindsay Lohan, going on a little bit more, Lindsay Lohan actually signed this deal while she was in rehab. And Oprah gave her some extra perks, such as 2 fully paid assistants and a stylist. So, good job, Lindsay.
Why can't Oprah give me some money?
Well, you're not Lindsay Lohan, so you better start working on getting that Lindsay Lohan life.
I can have a drug problem. Give me some money, I'll invent any kind of problem you want. I'll be the crazy dog lady instead of the crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Join hoarders. So we're going to take another break, and then we'll come back and talk about Elliot's spin. Okay, so let's talk about this, Syria. Senator John McCain has threatened to hold up the renomination of General Martin Dempsey as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff following a verbal clash between the two during a committee hearing. The senator is irritated that the United States has not entered the Syrian war or provided CIA mercenaries operating there with arms to depose the Syrian government and defeat its well-trained and disciplined army.
America needs to stop being the world's policeman. We have enough problems. Okay, I agree too. I don't understand McCain. I think McCain, like most other legislators in Congress and the majority of the American public, is completely misguided or utterly misguided about what the Syrian rebels stand for. Just because they're rebels does not mean they're on the right side or whatever the right side is.
Yeah.
Does not mean that they're standing up for your principles. I think people will be surprised at the kind of atrocities the rebels have committed. It's just the fact that the media has constructed this dialogue that Bashar Assad is a dictator and the Syrian rebels are fighting for democracy. Look what happened to Egypt with the Arab Spring. We took out Mubarak. We had the Muslim Brotherhood. And now, the Muslim Brotherhood was just overthrown. There's another coup. I mean, look at what's happened. I mean, come on, people. Mm-hmm. It's just sad that nobody knows what's going on. And everybody's thinking that, oh my gosh, we need to fund these rebels. We need to get them. I'm like, no, it's not true. It's just the fact that people just don't know what's going on. People are misled by what the media told them. And it's just terrible in general, overall. Just because you're white doesn't mean you're right. Just because someone is a rebel doesn't mean they're right necessarily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to look at the language in which the media is using to describe a certain group. If you notice, rebels, anti-government fighters in Syria are called rebels by the U.S. media and the government. Anti-government fighters in Iraq or Afghanistan are called insurgents. They're doing the same thing, but they are called by different language to connote positive or negative. Insurgent,
rebel can go either way, but insurgents has always sounded very negative. I think because I think the association people make with insurgents and terrorism.
It was designed that way. Insurgents started as a talking point.
Absolutely, I agree with you. It's interesting how the media. It's just sad though that everyone is just. I mean, I was the same way for a long time. That everyone just believes what the media said, and no one is investigating it further.
I need to break in here. Excuse me.
Media sources beyond the mainstream.
Excuse me. I need to break in here at this point to update listeners on something that we broke a little bit before. The story between this is very timely, between Turkey and Syria. Earlier we talked about the breaking story that Turkey had fired across Syrian borders. We're finding out now that it fired on a Syrian village, and Turkish troops and tanks are seen moving across the border towards the Syrian village. Again, details are sketchy, but I will update you again if I get any more information. So yeah, let's move on back to this about Syria. So this is developing before our eyes. So McCain said, I must tell both the witnesses at the onset, I'm very concerned about the role you've played over the past 2 years, to which Dempsey replied, with all due respect, Senator, you're asking me to agree that we've been inactive, and we have not been inactive. And that brings to what I think is the most important of all. Senator McCain is acting as if the United States has been dormant in this situation. And maybe overtly it has, but covertly is a very different story. This Syrian rebel force, fronted by Al-Nusra and also, the Free Syrian Army, would be nothing without the support of the United States, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt. I mean, it would not be anything,
Absolutely, I agree. And we are spread so thin. We are in every country. We've got our fingers in everybody's little pies.
Yeah.
And when things backfire, do we take the blame? Absolutely. I mean, look at Osama.
Yeah.
We gave him how much in weapons and money when he was fighting the Soviets?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And he turned around and used it against us. Absolutely. I'm sorry. It's just interesting how people don't realize the consequences to their actions at all.
Well, no, I think they don't care because they're focused on short-term policy goals. And what
I agree with that.
And what motivates that is the election cycle. We have a presidential election every 4 years. We have a midterm in the middle of the presidency. So there is this pressure to show demonstrable results on the surface for the American voter.
And the elections really start, yes, they're every 4 years, but they start campaigning 2 years before. So
absolutely. And
think about it, our election cycle really every 2 years.
And the space between election cycles is decreasing rapidly every year.
Mm-hmm.
Soon, statistically, if it continues in this route, it may be just like a perpetual election campaign. But in which case, we'd see Congress be working even less. But that's how you get a 15% approval rating.
TV is the one that says that they're responding to Syria.
And Press TV is saying that Syria fired on Turkey?
Yeah.
Okay, because Press TV...
Turkey is responding.
Yeah, Press TV is also where I'm getting the information as well. But I want to mention back to Osama bin Laden. You brought up that, we were supporting Osama bin Laden as part of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. You know, it could be argued that in a sense we jump-started Al-Qaeda. You know, we jump-started the Taliban.
Yep.
You know?
We did.
So,
I mean, we supported them financially and we armed them.
yeah. Yeah.
And what happened is when the Soviets pulled out, we were supposed to give, more assistance for a government to be set up. And then we didn't.
But
and
because at that point,
against America.
Yeah, because our short-term military policy goal was just to get the Soviets to exhaust them, and
It was
after that
all
we
about
didn't
the
care.
Soviets, and we made all these promises, and then we turned around and screwed him over, so to speak, and it made him so anti-American that
Yes.
look what happened all, 30 years later.
We did not give
20 years later.
we did not give a shit about the Afghan people until they were a threat to us.
Absolutely.
You know, but
No, not even until they were a threat to us, until after they hurt
until
us.
after you're right. It is until after 9/11/2001.
They blew up the World Trade Center.
Well, and I think that it also needs to be said that most of the 9/11 hijackers were from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I think 15 out of the 19 hijackers were Saudi Arabians.
15 of the 19.
Because
That's interesting. That's
19, I think.
that's believable.
Because that's where he's from. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because his family is very wealthy.
Yeah.
Oh, very wealthy.
The Bin Laden family is the second wealthiest family in Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
You know, they're basically parts of the state, but that's not really talked about because that would be a lot to explain. But let's get back to this.
Everybody thinks that he has no money and lives in a cave.
And he would, and you know what? No, because
they're like Tora Bora, and he goes on that.
Yeah, Tora Bora.
To be honest, I don't know if he's really dead. Trust me, I don't think Al-Qaeda would have confirmed it if he wasn't.
Yeah, because
I think that they would have used it as propaganda if he wasn't dead.
they would have
I think
tried to
that's
embarrass
confirming-
the United States.
I think that's confirming it. I'm not into conspiracy theories, to be honest. I honestly think he is dead. Maybe they say he's dead because they're worried he's giving information. Who knows?
Well,
I really do think he's dead because Salahiri, I believe, is a new leader. I don't see when appointing a new leader, considering that Osama bin Laden, I think, liked being the leader. I mean, I don't know him personally, obviously. But I don't think he would have handed down the power as easily if he were still alive. I really do think he's dead. Honestly, I do think he's dead. I don't think we need to see a body. I think, honestly, that Al-Qaeda has more to gain if you were alive than if you were dead. I think, honestly, the fact that they confirmed it and then they were angry and they tried to plot more attacks since then, I think that says it all. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I'm not a big fan of them. I don't know why. I don't know. I just don't believe in conspiracy theories. I think it's because of my background. I've had a lot of issues with Muslims having conspiracy theories, and it pisses me off. So I'm not a big fan of them. So in general, I don't have a good liking.
Well,
but I do have them though, regardless. But I just don't believe in that.
I must interject here. You know, I do believe in many conspiracy theories, however, not this one. I do think Osama bin Laden is dead for the reasons that Elizabeth has mentioned, that he would be more used to the Islamist movement alive, not dead. I mean, because if the United States was lying about this, then Al-Qaeda could just come out and embarrass our country like it never had been before.
Let's say we captured him.
So you're saying maybe
he's dead, but we're really milking him for information. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I really do think he's dead. I know that there is a few people that do believe he's not dead, but I really do think that because it came from the head of the Al-Qaeda extreme website that he was dead, that he actually is dead.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
I don't know.
mean, everyone's different, though.
Well, let's get back to the question at hand, which is Syria. So why, I'm going to ask this question to both of you guys. Why do you think not only Senator McCain, but sort of the American policy establishment, both Democratic and Republican, are pushing so hard for intervention in Syria?
In the light of all of the, terrorism and the anti-Muslim propaganda that's gone around, I think, oh, look, we're helping them.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
Like, I feel like in general, our foreign policy goal is like shaped as a sports savior complex, where we want to intervene in all these foreign countries and be cast as this benevolent superpower.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
That's just my opinion.
I agree. I think what maybe Americans don't understand is to the countries that are being intervened in, they do not see it as help. You know, it only makes the problem worse. You know, if you're seeing the problem is anti-Americanism, you know, intervention in a country's affairs, it does not help. But let's continue in this article. So in May, John McCain allegedly ventured to the Middle East in a very controversial trip to meet with the public relations wing of the so-called rebels, the Free Syrian Army. I'm sure you guys saw these little photo ops, and he had to come back and say, oh, he didn't know this person was a terrorist. That was a very big controversy a few months
Who did he
ago.
meet with? The public relations wing. Can you say propaganda?
Yeah, it was a public relations stunt.
The photo op. It's McCain, and it's a photo op saying, I'm not dead. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, everyone when he was running for president said, oh, he's going to die, he's going to die.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people didn't want to vote for him. He's too old, he's going to die.
He's trying to throw his weight around while he still can.
I feel like McCain gets off a lot because he was tortured in Vietnam, so nobody wants to question him.
Yeah.
To be honest. I feel like during the presidential election, we had him. It's worse because he was tortured in Vietnam. Like, he has this authority that you cannot impugn. During the presidential election, though, they did not hold punches. You know? They really let him have it, so I don't know about that. In the past, maybe, but...
Yeah, I feel like during
they threw some hard punches.
Yeah, let me say this. I feel like pre 2008, I feel like McCain, you know, historically did have a very good relationship with the press, and he was, you know, not really critiqued. However, I agree with Annika in saying that, you know, it's obvious that he didn't win, number one, but also the media was critical of him, and I think only became more critical of him when Sarah Palin was brought on board.
Mm-hmm. No, that was a big clusterfuck. He could have won had they not had her.
Well, that's another topic. But so let's move on here. So McCain said only a small portion of the so-called rebels are radical jihadists fighting to convert Syria into a state dominated by Sharia law. In fact, the CIA-sponsored rebels are largely radical Sunni Salafists who behead Christians and feed them to dogs. Remarkably, McCain said Al-Nusra only accounts for 7,000 out of the 100,000 mercenaries inside Syria. In fact, Al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda dominate the effort to topple al-Assad. Every single day, more and more extremists flow in. They're flowing in all the time, these extremists. McCain even admitted himself. Nowhere in rebel-controlled Syria is there a secular fighting force to speak of, the New York Times reported in April. The Islamist character of the opposition reflects the main constituency of the rebellion. FSA mercenaries are defecting to Al-Nusra and radical Muslim groups in record numbers. So why don't politicians seem to get it that when we support the Syrian rebels, we are supporting this force? We are supporting Sharia law.
I don't think people are thinking about it, to be honest. I think people are thinking of what they gain from it.
But if Midwestern towns are voting to ban Sharia law because they're that concerned about it, why are they not concerned about Sharia law in actual countries that it may actually be implemented
I think 9.5 people out of 10 don't even know what Sharia law is in America.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's true. America
really needs to stay out of it. We have no business in it whatsoever.
I agree.
You know, we have people in Afghanistan. Let's fight one war at a time.
Yeah.
But technically, it's supposedly not a war.
Well,
you know,
that's a rhetorical device as much as everything.
Let's have people die in one area at a time in large numbers.
Yeah,
I'm very, very outspoken. I mean, We have special forces in the Congo right now. We have troops all over the place.
Yes.
Think how many millions, billions of dollars are going to all these countries overseas to fight their wars.
Yes.
When we need medical care and we need this, and take care of your own first, then you can go out and do other things.
As simply put, and I am not saying this from a lack of compassion for the Syrian people, I cry thinking about Syrian people. But fundamentally, this war is not a struggle of the American people.
No, it is a civil war. It is that country deciding how it wants to go forward in the future.
And we cannot control that, and we shouldn't try to.
No, we shouldn't try because it's just going to backfire if we do. It's just going to backfire because whoever wins this civil war, if it is not the side that we back, if the other side wins, all it's going to do is cause another enemy for America.
Yeah.
The world opinion doesn't like, it's going to come back on us. America got involved, so whatever happens, good or bad, is America's fault.
When we make it our fault.
Well, right. We intervene, it makes it our fault.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know what, we've really, if we're concerned about ever being influential in Syria again, we've really messed up. Because if the Islamist rebellion is defeated and al-Assad stays, well, we have completely positioned ourselves and burned all bridges with him. And on the other hand, if by chance, this Free Syrian Army does succeed, well then, okay, are we going to be allies with a Islamic theocracy? No! We're not going to be allies with a Sharia law state.
I mean, it's just, it is a giant clusterfuck, and we need to stay as far away from it as we can.
I agree, but unfortunately, I am shocked that we don't have a more open, overt presence in Syria by this point. A few months ago, I thought because of all the pressure from, you have, military personnel going on the news, pushing for intervention in Syria. You have politicians, you have pundits, you have the news media. I mean, there is a lot of pressure. Fundamentally, almost overwhelmingly, are pro-rebellion messages, pushing for intervention.
Absolutely.
They've already decided in their minds. I'm surprised it hasn't happened because there's so much working for that,
Well, I'm glad it hasn't.
Bad idea and that this is wrong.
No, it's absolutely a bad idea, and it's absolutely wrong. Covertly, we're going to do it.
And covertly, we are.
It's wrong. But Americans see most Muslims as bad guys because of 9/11.
Yeah.
No, getting involved with it's extra bad because of that. It makes it 10 times worse. Because Americans in general are not going to see anything there as a positive step.
Yeah.
I think we should give all this else, money, weapons, etc. We need to stay as far away as we can.
And we give ammunition to...
Being humanitarian is wonderful.
Yeah, but we give ammunition to anti-American groups by intervening. We give them more rhetorical propaganda points.
Oh, I know.
So, guys, Senator McCain is obviously a smart guy. He almost became our president. Is it the fact that he's just ignorant, or is he willfully ignorant, or is he lying? Does he not know that we already have involvement in Syria?
I think he's willfully ignorant. I think he knows what he's talking about. I mean, I think he knows the statistics. I think he just has his own goals in mind. He's a foreign policy hawk. That's what his shtick is. He wants a headline. He's afraid of being forgotten. He wants a headline. This is a good way to get them.
See, that's pathetic.
He knows he's got a lot of pull, too, because he's the foreign policy hawk in the Republican Party.
Yeah, I don't know who he thinks he is, though, but... So,
I don't know.
Moving on.
Everybody wants, it's funny. You're quiet for a little bit, and they start to forget about you, so you gotta do something, whether it's smart or stupid, to wave your arms in the air saying, I'm here.
Yeah.
Don't forget about me.
Yeah.
So that's what they do.
Yeah. But you know what? If that's really what it is at the end of the day, this is a little kind of attention-getting venture that can cost hundreds of thousands of lives. So this is serious.
Absolutely.
If you're going to do that, that is unacceptable and immoral because it's a lot bigger than you think it is, Mr. McCain.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
And again, ignorance is,
Yeah.
There's a lot of ignorance out there.
I mean, he's an elected official. He shouldn't be ignorant, and he's probably not ignorant, but he's playing on the ignorance of me and you. But in this article, that intelligence agencies are involved in Syria.
This entire situation is so screwed up. I was trying to stay informed by looking online, but as far as actually actively watching it, I'm trying to limit it because I know the effect it has on me.
Yeah, but we have to understand there are greater forces at work than us. These things will happen. They're happening for very definite, concrete reasons in the world, and we cannot be expected to change this. We can't stop it, unfortunately. We cannot stop a war. There is some American involvement there, but any last words on Syria?
This entire situation makes me so sad. I hurt for the world. I hurt for the Syrian people. I hurt for the ignorance of America. And I would love to be more involved, but at the same time, I don't know how much more I can take emotionally. They need to work it out themselves.
And that's the unfortunate, sad truth, but that's the truth about life.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Any war, there's civil wars raging all over Africa, all over the place.
Yeah.
But why are we focused on just Syria?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I want to ask one more question, actually, before we leave. So basically, there are some that would say, mentioning Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and now Syria, that this is, in a larger context, the Western involvement in Syria is part of a broader effort to destabilize anti-American regimes in the region.
I don't know about that, but
I would say unequivocally, I completely agree with that. I think that Syria is, why it's so important for this establishment is they see it as a bridge to Iran. If you can take out one of Iran's greatest allies, then you're one step closer to the prize.
No, that is true. And I personally have hated the government in Syria for years and years and years because my family is in Israel and they're a border country. They can rob missiles and that's a bad thing. So, but I like a nice, stable, not sure family per se, but, a Jew-hating government in there, absolutely. But, I don't know if America's intentionally trying to destabilize the entire region.
I think that I have two things to say about that. Under Bashar al-Assad, up until 2011, it was a highly stable regime in the region as compared to basket cases like Iraq.
Well, but no, look, it started with Egypt and it's just spread.
Well, I would say it started with Afghanistan.
No, that wasn't an internal war in Afghanistan.
But we just talked about the origins with, Soviet fighting there in the 1980s. A lot of that was not internal.
They all came together to fight the big, USSR. There wasn't an internal war there.
Oh, absolutely there was an internal war. But it was also an external war.
At the time, they all joined together to fight against the Russians.
Well, but there were those who did support the government of Afghanistan and did support the USSR.
Oh, few and far between. People tend to be very observant of religion, whatever their religion is. And they knew that becoming part of the USSR would have meant no more religion because the USSR did not tolerate religion.
Well, the plan, as far as the Soviets, was not to incorporate Afghanistan into the USSR, but they entered troops into the nation to bolster a communist government in Afghanistan that was not being accepted by Islamists. But there were many reasons that people in the cities, more progressive people in Afghanistan, who at that time actually existed, this is before the destruction of the next 20 years, women had the right to go to school for the first time. Women were becoming doctors. They were becoming politicians. Minorities, people who were not necessarily the former aristocracy of Afghanistan, were allowed entry into the society for the first time under the communist government. There were many people who did not want the Soviets to leave or did not want this government to end. It was not a one-sided thing, and if it was a one-sided thing, it would have ended a lot sooner than 1992.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
Yeah, so I don't really know how we got to... so Sarah, do you believe this is part of a larger effort to destabilize anti-American regimes in the Middle East?
Yes, I think that we want to... Why do you think that we're trying to see a superpower such as China? So I think that we are trying to keep up these puppet leaders and whoever supports us. I think we have a great interest in making sure that we still are very much in control, that we still have leaders that are very much allied to us.
Yeah.
I think that's why we have so much issues with people in Latin America.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
they're standing up to us.
Yeah.
And we don't get, so we're not close with them at all. And we try our best to support coups and try to destabilize those regimes by withholding funds or by, because we have a lot of influence in the IMF and the World Bank. We try to not give them loans. We try to do whatever we can to make sure that whatever government's in place, we support. Look at the government in Colombia.
Yeah.
They're the government, and we throw a lot of money at them.
I mean, they're the definition. They're the textbook definition of a banana republic. But to bring this back to the Middle East again, you mentioned puppet rulers. Do you guys think that, say, the rebels were able to win and install a ruler in Syria? Do you think that he would obey the United States as a puppet?
And then what we do.
I think...
Yeah, anybody money can do a lot. Money corrupts, obviously.
Yeah, but
so
money can only...
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, but in this situation, you have money going up against some of the fiercest religious fundamentalism. And that is that's one struggle that money cannot always win,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's...
No, the truly fundamental religious people know it's not going to happen.
I think it's
They can't beat that.
I think it's really a folly to think that if they're emerged...
Not if they truly believe.
Yeah.
If they're pretending, if they're just playing at it to get what they want,
Yeah.
that's one thing.
But you know what? We know...
Money isn't going to sway them.
We know that there are many true believers, or at least a large element in this movement, in Al-Nusra, in the rebellion, or else we wouldn't see people being pushed off buildings, poisoned.
Right.
We wouldn't see them being mutilated on camera, biting out of the hearts and the livers of people.
Oh my gosh, I know that video. That's horrible.
And this is why it's scary. It is scary if our government thinks that if we support these people and they win, that they will ever represent a single American value. That's wrong. And on that, let's move on. We're back. So that was a very vigorous, lovely discussion about one of my favorite topics, which was Syria. But let's shift to the UK and also the US. I'm sure you guys have at least know a little bit about the woes that have been troubling Rupert Murdoch's News Corp in the past 2 years with allegations of phone hacking.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe.
So...
Yes.
Rupert Murdoch has come out and made a statement. He says that, officials, law enforcement officials in the UK have probed him excessively and have gone on too long, the investigations have. He conceded that in times during the investigation he used, quote, the wrong adjectives to describe his frustration at events over the past 2 years. I think it would be good to review some of the main points of this truly almost inhumane course of events. So it started when employees of News Corporation newspapers were accused of engaging in phone hacking, police bribery, and exercising improper influence in the pursuit of publishing stories. In July 2011, it was revealed that the phones of murdered schoolgirl Minnie Dowler, relatives of deceased British soldiers, and victims of the London bombings were also accessed. The negative attention garnered by the scandal eventually reached the United States, where News Corporation is headquartered and operates multiple media outlets including Fox News and Fox Business. The FBI launched a probe on the 14th of July 2011 to determine whether News Corporation accessed voicemails of victims of the 9/11-2001 attacks. Over the course of the testimony before the inquiries, Rupert Murdoch admitted that a cover-up had taken place within the News of the World to hide the scope of the phone hacking. The first individual to accept the News of the World's apology and compensation was actress Sienna Miller, who received £100,000 plus legal costs. Sports pundit Andy Gray followed in June, accepting a payout of £20,000 plus legal costs. In April, The Observer reported claims from a former minister that Rupert Murdoch tried to persuade Prime Minister Gordon Brown in 2010 to help in resisting attempts by Labour MPs and peers to investigate the affair and to go easy on News of the World in the run-up to the UK general election of May 2010.
I was so disgusted with her, with what she did to her.
With what? Who did to who? Who did to who?
With the going forward with the girl that committed suicide with all of her texts and, going on, but that just sickens me.
I mean, it's really sick. It's, I mean,
I didn't like Rupert Murdoch from before. I don't even remember what he did that made me not like him a gazillion years ago, but yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? We don't hear about other media moguls engaging in not openly, but, we don't hear that Ted Turner has bribed the police. I mean, that is serious. I mean, if a large corporation, very influential, very visible, if they can get away with
gaming... He needs to be in jail is what he needs to
if they can get away with gaming the legal system, then what else can they get away with? When we talk about...
Again, money talks.
Yeah.
He's got plenty of money, so he can get away with what he wants to get away with.
And in the United States, that equals free speech. That equals the ability to act with impunity.
Well, it's more than free speech. You're right. It's acting with impunity.
Exactly.
Free speech we have no matter what.
Yeah, I think the...
Free actions is what it comes down to, and he needs to be taken down a peg.
Yeah, and what it boils down to is that is wrong. And then, again, like it said, tapping the phones of deceased soldiers and victims of terrorist attacks in London. I mean, is a story worth doing this, Elizabeth?
I can't believe they were justified. I hate the idea of paying someone off. It just makes me so sick. It just smells of corruption.
It is corruption.
And lack of values, lack of anything. Like, I cannot believe that there's more outrageous. People have forgotten about it, for the most part.
Yeah, in America, the only reason it was in the news today is because Rupert Murdoch decided to call the whole investigation excessive. He is blatantly exploiting people's pain for his own financial gain. And then
he's not even making a farce of I'm doing it for the news. He doesn't even care about that. And he's advocating it, is what it is.
Yeah, but he's acting like this is a burden upon him. Yeah, but he's also making himself seem like a victim when the fact that he was tapping the phone lines of murdered girls. With what? And so this article goes on to say, the BBC reported on the 20th of May, 2011, that a senior News of the World executive was implicated. This report also said that the number of people whose phones may have been hacked may be much larger than had previously been thought. The High Court of the UK was said to have been told that notebooks belonging to a private investigator hired by News Corp. These notebooks contain thousands of mobile phone numbers, and police also found 149 individual United Kingdom Social Security numbers.
Why has he not been prosecuted?
Well, because he has people lower downs, like Rebecca Brooks, who can take... He has fall guy after fall guy. I mean, it's not him who's taking the brunt of this. It is the lower... it is his subordinates in News Corp, and it's a big company. So there are a lot of subordinates to go around. But corporations have unaccountable power in today's world, especially one that this corporation has the power to not only shape the truth, but manufacture the truth. Think about how powerful News Corporation is in just the United States. I mean, we're talking about Wall Street Journal, Fox News, Fox Business, Fox News Radio, and many other publications. People have found evidence suggesting that the private investigator, Glenn Mulcair, collected personal information about the family of the missing schoolgirl, Millie Dowler. following her disappearance in March 2002 and the subsequent discovery of her murdered body 6 months later. According to the paper, journalists working for the News of the World had hired private investigators to hack into Dowler's voicemail inbox while she was still missing. It was alleged that they had deleted some messages, giving false hope to the police and to Dowler's family, who thought that she might still be alive, and potentially destroying valuable evidence. On July 6, 2011, Daily Telegraph reported that the phones of some relatives of British soldiers killed in action in Iraq and Afghanistan may have been accessed by the News of the World. It was reported that relatives of some victims may have had their telephones accessed by News of the World in the aftermath of London terrorist attacks. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown allegedly had his bank account accessed by the Sunday Times in 2000, and the Sun gained private medical records about Gordon Brown's son, Fraser. Now, I mentioned Rebecca Brooks. She's a subordinate, but also a fairly high executive in News Corp. At this time, she telephoned Gordon Brown to tell him that the Sun was going to reveal that his son had been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which information they had retrieved through hacking, and tried to persuade him not to spoil the newspaper's exclusive by announcing it himself first. Put yourself in Gordon Brown's shoes. Could anything be more infuriating than having a newspaper calling to say, hey, we know that your son has a terminal condition, and please do us a favor and not spoil it by talking about it. If they do have stronger libel laws, it does not stop a very lurid media in the UK. The thing that balances it out, though, is that you have garbage like The Sun and the Daily Mail, but you also, on the other side, you have the paragon of responsible journalism.
What about OK? Don't forget about OK.
Well, I don't know about that, but what balances out is you have News of the World and tabloid, but it's balanced out by the fact in the UK that you have, the paragon of responsibility and august journalism with the BBC.
He is not going to be brought down.
Do either of you think that Rupert Murdoch will ever be brought to justice?
Nope.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think so ever, honestly.
That's so sad. I mean,
unfortunately, money buys justice.
Money buys justice.
Unless you do something so bad and there's so much evidence against you,
yes.
Money buys justice.
Absolutely. I could not have said it better myself. So Rebecca Brooks' trial date was set for the 9th of September 2013. So we need to keep this story alive because it is still continuing to this day. We need to be part of the minority who is still speaking about this. And when Rebecca Brooks...
if she's willing to go down for him...
Looking for promotion. So that's that. Let's look at who has declared their candidacies, because some people have, believe it or not. The election is in November 2016. Some people have declared in July of 2013. I'm not making this up. And then other people who have hinted, and we'll discuss kind of who we think can be, who may be successful, and then our dream tickets. So in terms of declared people, there's really only two. I don't know. Do you know who Adam Kokesh is?
I'm not sure.
He is a pro-gun rights activist who really only gained notoriety and started appearing on the news in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting. So he has declared that he will run. But also Terry Jones, the pastor who who put on Burn a Quran Day and gained international notoriety for 15 seconds. He's running for president.
It's too early to say they're running. This is just nuts.
Well, I mean, I'm telling you that they've declared. They've declared. But I think Terry Jones... do you think Terry... You know all about his little burn the Quran thing, right?
No.
So back in 2011 or 12, this guy announced that he would celebrate Christmas by burning a Quran, and then everybody from right to left said, oh my God, do not do that. Because number one, that's terrible. Number two, there's going to be reprisal attacks on our troops in the Middle East. And so eventually he was able to, I believe he did not go forward with this. But that's how he got famous. I mean, also became famous afterwards. He stayed in the spotlight by predicting that the world would end on December 21st, 2012, which it did not.
Oh, God, yeah.
So his bread and butter is really burning the Quran and proclaiming the end of the world. So, I mean, do you think that the conservatives, religious conservatives, would ever take him seriously?
No, he's not going anywhere. No, but the minute that other people hear
About his antics?
I mean, you're going to have your, percentage of people that are like, yeah, get those Muslims, burn the Quran. And then, that they are such a small percentage that they're useless.
Yeah, and I think that there is anti-Muslim bias, but I don't think that even the people who are moderately biased against Islam would support Terry Jones, because he's just so abrasive, and just he's a joke. And like you said, like so many people we've talked about on this, podcast in its short life, we've talked about a lot of substantive issues, but we've also talked a lot about these people who have their 15 minutes of fame. And he is one of them. That is the only reason...
He's not even going to have 15 minutes. He's more like a fiver.
I mean, he's done. He is done. And I think, now that, you've kind of opened my eyes more to this where I can detect this, I think this is his bid to stay in the spotlight. He's going to use the election cycle.
Yeah.
But
he's not even going to make it, anywhere close to 2016.
You don't think so?
No. He'll be burned out before the end of this year.
Yeah, and I don't see, unless there's there's no way.
But that's what's disgusting. Look, it's middle of 2013, and the election is November of 2016, and these idiots are very...
I know, but you know what, these are, the people who are declaring this early, they're just the attention seekers.
And the people that are declaring this early are the ones who are going to be gone.
Yeah, they're going to be gone just as quick. So let's talk about, in terms of more, what we could call more serious candidates. I don't like that phrase, but more serious than Terry Jones. That people who have either have hinted that they would like to, or there's
with more potential.
More potential.
Call it that.
So these people have either hinted that they wanted to, or there are movements to draft them, or it's just suspected that they might. So on the Democratic side, so let's talk about Democrats first. Howard Dean, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and Elizabeth Warren.
Who was the one in the middle? I'm sorry, I was too busy ranting on Dean.
Well, let's take it one by one. Howard Dean.
Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Oh, that's not even substantive, though.
But you know what? That's what cost him last time.
Yeah, but that's stupid. I mean, if that's...
It doesn't matter. The fact is, if he was as close as he was, and it cost him that last time...
I have more faith in the American people that they will not...
It cost him the whole thing last time.
But that was 2000...
The minute that happened, his ratings went into the toilet.
But that was 2004.
I don't think so.
I think Howard Dean is an excellent candidate. I will do anything I can to support his candidacy.
I like him.
I mean, I think he's a genuine, nice guy that I would go to bat for. But I want to think better of the American people, that they would just hear like this screech and then not want to vote for someone. I mean, George Bush has said some stupid ass things, but he got elected to president twice.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you now, I would really love to see Howard Dean, but I think it's going to be a challenge to defeat the juggernaut that is bringing us to our next possibility, Hillary Clinton. There seems to be a lot of building support for her already.
I don't like her. I never liked her, and I hope to God she goes away.
I mean, it's starting to seem, maybe it's too soon, but it's starting, maybe this is just me being duped by the media, but I think the evidence is starting to say it's kind of an inevitability that Hillary will run.
Of course it is.
Yeah, I mean, so what exactly are your qualms about Hillary?
First of all, I have a qualm with the fact that she stayed by Bill.
Well,
first time you lied, one thing.
That's
Second
not
time you lied. The third time you lied, it looked like an idiot.
But that's not
It
political,
really
though.
does.
But in terms of policy.
Something I can't put my finger on. You know, like a bad vibe, bad juju, I guess.
Yeah. But I think there, and I respect that, and I get it. Because I get bad, vibes from Mitt Romney, but I need more,
Right.
you need more reasons.
I need to look more into her voting record.
Yes.
I know what that's.
A lot of grist for the mill here. So either we're going to get some fodder to change our ideas and some reasons to change our ideas about Hillary, or to reinforce this feeling, fairly soon. I'm going to say that Hillary Clinton is the definition of the corporate Democratic insider. She is the establishment. And so
she's been power hungry from the beginning. The only reason she married Bill Clinton was for power. I mean, she's too hungry for it. Maybe that's what it is. Too badly.
And I don't know. I'm torn because for a lot of people, when Hillary Clinton is brought up, you hear a lot of hate in their voice. And I'm concerned about where exactly that is coming from. But on the other hand, there are very justifiable critiques of Hillary Clinton, but I think a lot of it is not substantive. It's not based on policy. And I've heard a lot of people just call her, pardon this, but they call her, or they try to characterize her as an ice queen or a cold bitch. And I think, we have to look at, if we're looking at politics, let's look at politics, We need to talk about...
Absolutely. But
from the same people that already dislike her because they would just see her as too soft. I mean, they would,
I could see that, now, but when she was first lady, when, politics wasn't it for her, I do remember that she tried to get a big health care bill pushed.
Yes.
And it's like she almost cuckolded him. It's like she was the power behind the throne. And she made him look even dumber than he was.
But that should reinforce your idea that she did have ambitions for the whole time.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. The whole point with her is, she even married him. It's like I feel even less about her. It's not like she married him for love or this and that. She married him because she wanted to go somewhere, and I can't respect that. I'm sorry, I can't.
There is this almost remarkable sense of inevitability about her rise, and for some reason that was cut short by even stronger phenomenon that was Barack Obama as a brand. So this is kind of, I think, a resumption of what her project was before. Do I think that she'll necessarily be disastrous for the country? No, but I don't want another status quo president. I understand, and I'm realistic, when every political structure that we have set up in this country is to crank out status quo presidents and leaders, but it is my sincere hope that she not become president, because I do not, if we need to focus on our country first and not worry about the outside world like we had both agreed on in earlier segments, why is it important what a candidate's position on Israel is? But the same could be said about the new Iraqi government.
But it's not like the new Iraqi government is safe enough that we can rely on it. The Israeli government is established. They've been there for years. They're not going anywhere, and they're very American friendly. And then I have a personal stake in it because my family is all there.
Yeah, and I think, I don't, we've talked about this many times. I don't have that personal stake. I don't see a difference between intervention in one place and intervention in another place. And it's one thing to be...
No, but I'm not saying intervention, but it's nice to know that, God forbid something happens, we can at least use it as a launching spot. When the Iraq war and stuff was happening, we were going to use our air base in Turkey as a refueling spot, and they said no.
Yeah, because the war was very controversial.
Right. But if you're an ally's an ally kind of thing.
I accept that, but at the same time, I don't know if Israel is necessarily a healthy ally to have if we're going to be that involved. Because if, like you said, kind of to know that we will be there for them, if that means that we will enter war with any country, or World War III, war with Iran, I don't think that that's positive for the United States, and I think that will hasten both Israel's downfall and the United States.
Right. My point is just, though, if you're going to be an ally of America, you don't turn away when it's not convenient. You either are or you're not.
Well, isn't it? Well, and there are arguments of why Turkey did what it did, because the invasion of Iraq was an aggressive war. It violated international law. It was condemned at the UN. So there are reasons. Turkey had a lot to lose by being seen as a supporter of U.S. imperialism.
Right, but the U.S. has supported Turkey through all kinds of shit.
Yes,
so,
but Turkey couldn't invade.
We were there for them.
Yeah, it's true. It is true, but Turkey could not invade Mexico and expect us to go along with it. But when a neighbor is destabilized, that is something that you take very seriously, and we don't deal with it like the Middle East does. And at the time, our administration was framing that as the your way or the highway thing, so they were framed as anti-American. But Turkey is not anti-American. Yes, Islamists are gaining power there, but it is still one of our greatest allies in the Middle East. That is not without question. So I don't really know how we got to where we got to.
To look at.
We have a lot to digest, but we also have a lot of time to digest it in, before... Unfortunately...
We started talking about the presidential election, and things like that, international policy, foreign policy, are going to be good. Now, one thing about Hillary that we were talking about that bothers me is when the whole Benghazi thing came out, she kind of played with her head in the sand.
Yes.
And I really made me disrespect her.
Me as well.
Yes.
That's where I give credence to people's allegations.
She's sleazy. That's the best way for me to... She's sleazy.
Well, I don't think that she's sleazy, but I would say that she has a certain arrogance about herself and what she can do, as a member of the establishment.
I don't know. As Secretary of State, she had a lot of damn power. And
yeah, but she wasn't steering her own ship, though. She was taking orders from the president.
Oh, please. I think she had plenty of power of her own.
I see. So. I don't have information that contradicts what you're saying, but I don't think I can agree.
She tried to hide Benghazi. She tried to make it as if it was nothing.
You know what? It's so much larger than her, because this is the policy of this administration.
True. Who
sets the tone? Who sets the tone? It's not Hillary Clinton. It's not the Clinton administration. It's the Obama administration.
That's true. That is absolutely true. But she has been, how do I put it? She has been one of his most ardent supporters.
Sure,
everything he does with God.
But what else do you expect from a member of his administration? She is his employee. She was carrying out Obama's foreign policy. She was giving out Obama talking points. Those things are good.
But it was her policy, too. She agreed with it.
Well, I don't know. I can't say that. I don't know if she would do. I know if you're in that position, you do what you're told. But that is the definition of what it means to be a member of an administration. You don't hear members of an administration going rogue, or else they're not members of an administration for long. Well, what else? Jay Carney has to feign enthusiasm. He's the press secretary. I just don't. I've never. But I have. Not frustrated with Barack Obama, though. Frustrated maybe with the questions that the press is giving him. But I challenge you to name one member of an administration who is not behaving the way Hillary Clinton is. As she is not doing anything extraordinary, or I should say past tense.
I don't even know the names of people I need to know.
So you can't name one.
No, because
you don't have opinions of your own anymore. She was a shill for him. Short end of the stick is, I don't think either of us would support Hillary Clinton for the presidency.
No, I definitely would not.
Moving on. What about John Kerry, her replacement as Secretary of State?
Don't even get me started with him.
he was a weak candidate in 2004, partially because of when it was, but also because I don't think that he took pride in being a Democrat. He seemed very meek. He seemed like he was cowering in front of the specter of Republicans, terrorism, and George W. Bush. And I don't know if he's the person that we need. We need as president, but also the person that the Democratic Party needs. I don't think that he would fit the bill. And I think that if by some chance it comes to the point where, Hillary falls through, there's a power vacuum, and he can oust a dean, I don't think that he will ever become president.
No, there's no way. He blew it back then. He's not going to do it now.
Yeah, I mean, and
I think whoever does end up coming to the forefront is not going to be someone who has run before and gone anywhere.
So it's going to be sort of like a Barack Obama
We've gotten
phenomenon.
jaded as a people, and I think we want some new blood.
Yeah, and John Kerry, I don't even know any Democrats who are enthusiastic about John Kerry,
No, I don't think anybody really likes him.
And
So we got Kerry.
And it's not like I particularly dislike John Kerry. I think that he was treated very unfairly in 2004, but I don't think that he's a very strong campaigner. So I don't even really. You know what?
It's like Dan Quayle. Dan Quayle. My dad met him at a couple of functions when he worked for the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
And he said Quayle is actually one of the brightest guys he's ever met.
Wow.
He just is so camera shy that he flexes everything and he loses it. It's a politics. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, why did you even enter politics?
My dad said he couldn't. He's completely out of it.
Oh,
He
yeah.
could have stayed on and did something small, but,
Or maybe he should have been aiming for a job that wasn't so public in the first place.
Right.
You know?
It doesn't, you get some great people. Like, McCain would have made, I think, a good president at the time. And then they'd stick in with Palin. It's like, what the hell? I can't believe that she was his choice as a running mate.
American campaigning today, I mean, it brought the attention, however, for a temporary period, back to McCain at an important point where all his thunder was being stolen by Barack Obama. For the next week, the only thing that people could talk about is, wow, where did she come from? Who is she? She was an enthralling presence, but it quickly became clear that she was not very knowledgeable about the world.
Yeah.
But moving back onto the future, so finally, another person who I'm a big fan of, but I think would have a hard time, I think she'd make a great vice presidential candidate, but it's also been suspected that Elizabeth Warren would run in the Democratic primary.
You're going to laugh at me, but I really like Elizabeth Dole.
Elizabeth
She's
Dole?
done some really good work. No, she's running for Congress.
She is?
Yeah, she is.
See, I had no idea, and I'm a news junkie, so that's bizarre. She needs to get some better PR.
I think it's in, Wisconsin or something. Oh, well, I even heard about it.
She's a lovely person. She is a true advocate for the people. She's an advocate for banking honesty, and she's suffered a lot of criticism, and I worry that...
Yeah, I know she's into banking honesty, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, she's one of the few people who are actually making banks be accountable for the things that they do. But of course that's made her a target. I worry that she could become the next Hillary Clinton in the sense that she could become the next hate figure. And I think that would be undeserved, because I think she's doing exactly what a public official should be doing. But I think it would be an uphill battle for her, but I think that I mean, of course I would support her, but I just don't know if it's her time yet. And I think she might be a little bit too easy to be attacked by Republicans. Speaking of Republicans, it seems like these days the Republican field is a lot more dynamic and there's many more contenders. So we're not going to go. We don't have enough time to go through these one by one.
That's why I am a registered Republican, because I want to vote in the primaries.
Yeah, they're more exciting.
However, I feel like voting.
They're more exciting primaries. I follow the Republican primaries more because they're very entertaining.
And I think they have more to offer. I think with the Democratic Party, they know who they're going to lock in before they lock it in.
In these and I don't. I mean, that's not satisfying. But so I'm just going to run through this this list of names. If anybody catches your ear and you think that they'll run, we'll talk about them. But potential Republican candidates at this point include Jeb Bush, Dr. Ben Carson, Ted Cruz,
Ben Carson has no political experience.
So Ted Cruz, Ted Nugent, just shoot me, Rand Paul, Rick Perry, Rick Santorum, Donald Trump, Kelly Ayotte, Michelle Bachmann, Newt Gingrich, Nikki Haley, Sarah Palin, Marco Rubio, and Paul Ryan.
All right, Ryan isn't going to do it. He's too controversial. Rubio, he's got a lot of hurdles to overcome. Nugent is a joke. Nothing's going to happen there.
Well, Rick Santorum's controversial, too.
Rick Santorum is a nut job.
But there's a strong conservative element that that he had enough to stay in the race a long time. He was able to, he had enough of a base to survive longer than any of those other flavor of the month candidates. Herman Cain, Newt Gingrich, Michelle Bachmann, what's his name? Rick Perry, etc. I mean, he was the one who stuck it out to the end. I mean, if Jeb Bush becomes a front runner, which it looks like he has a good chance of, Rick Santorum will easily find his niche yet again because he can position himself the same way that he did in 2012, which is, this guy is not a real conservative. I'm a real conservative. And there's a big audience. You brought up Ben Carson, so you're right. Ben Carson has no political experience, but he is.
No, you don't start with presidents if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, well,
he's a brilliant speaker. He's an amazing surgeon, but you don't start at the top. You start at the bottom, and you work your way up.
Yeah, and he's angling himself to become president, and what he's trying to fluff his resume with is he has a new job as a Fox News contributor. Does that qualify as?
Great. I can be a newscaster. I can go get up in the morning and read all the news things and be a contributor. Does that make me qualified to lead the country? Yeah.
Of course it does, Annika. I can edit that out.
Oh, come on. Don't you think I'd be a great president? I tell everyone to go fuck off and do what I wanted.
Yes.
Just kidding. I don't go. I don't care if everybody hated me. I would tell it like it is. I'd let the people know what's really going on. Probably be assassinated in 5 minutes.
People don't, I hate to break it to you, but in the American political system, people don't get very far with that strategy.
I know.
You have to do this complicated, facetious dance on the one hand of saying America is the best country of the world and we have the right to own the world, but at the same time scare enough people to make them think that they need you.
It would be wouldn't it be amazing if we could actually have someone, like a real person that's not from the same area, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone that's a real human being, that's not from the elite, that's got no money, doesn't have all this family money, whatever, come out and say, look, here's the problem. We all have to take our own accountability. We all have to do, X, Y, Z to make things happen. Who's with me?
Well,
Who's
you know
willing
what?
to take that leap?
That was how the Tea Party presented itself in 2009. So let's talk about the Tea Party candidates. On this list, Ted Cruz, Donald Trump, Kelly Ayotte, Michelle Bachmann, and Sarah Palin, and Nikki Haley.
Michelle Bachmann's a nut job. Come on, so is Taylor. Taylor's a moron. I can see Russia from my backyard. That's like me saying I can see California from mine.
Well, do you think that any of these Tea Party candidates or the Tea Party will present itself as a force with power in the upcoming election cycle in the Republican Party?
I think it's all going to depend on who some of the other people are going to be, what platform they choose. It's too early to say.
Yeah, it is too early to say.
There are some people, before the Tea Party went a little crazy, there are some people, in the beginning, I really liked a lot of what they had to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a reaction that a lot of people had early on.
Yeah.
But then sort of the Tea Party...
But I think we need to have a third political party called the Republicrats.
The last thing that we need is a mixture of what we already have.
You've got Republicans and Democrats, and there's all your money. And everybody else gets left out in the cold.
Correct.
I would love to see a complete revamp of the system.
Yes.
I would love to see, okay, you get 6 months to campaign, that's it.
Yes.
Everybody gets, the government gives you $1 million a piece. That's it. You can buy one TV ad or you can buy flyers. You cannot raise money on your own. You cannot do any of that because that's pandering, that's lobbying, and then they control you. They give you money, they control you. None of that.
It is.
Taxpayers give you X amount of money, that's it. You have 6 months, that's it. Make it count. And that way people have a nice, equal playing ground.
I completely agree with you. And this is, and this may seem an extreme statement to some people, but I truly believe this, and I have truly believed this for years. Nothing will change in this system. The status quo will remain, and national decline will follow unless one of two things takes place. The system is itself able to work out the issue of money and politics, or there's a revolution. Besides that, there will be no change. What you are detailing needs to happen if American democracy will outlive this next century.
Yeah.
You know, because unfortunately, but the law is not on our side. I mean, the Supreme Court of the United States has declared that it is a constitutional law that money equals speech in this country. We are up against so much. We are up against the almighty power of the U.S. dollar. Yeah, the government may be broke, but who's not broke? The real movers and shakers of are their campaign contributors are not broke.
Right, and the thing is, if let's say you're a super group, and you give $10 million to a candidate.
Yeah, you don't have to disclose that anymore.
Okay. All right. Don't you think that you're going to expect that candidate to scratch your back?
Oh, that's the whole what the entire system is predicated on.
Exactly.
That's why we have, people ask why we have what we have. That's why. Because your candidates are not beholden to you. They're beholden by the people who paid them when they needed money to get into office. But let's wrap this up because this has been a great discussion. Again, I think that you are one of the most, I mean this, I think that you are one of the most insightful people that I know.
I'm just opinionated.
Well, I don't think that it's, well, because there are a lot of people who are opinionated who I wouldn't say are articulate or are, there are a lot of people who are opinionated but are hypocritical. I don't think that you are a hypocrite, and I think that you speak from your heart. I think that you're fearless, and I think that, like me, you're not afraid to say what you truly feel. And so I appreciate your contribution here, and it wouldn't be the same without you.
Thank you.
So before we go, what would your dream ticket look like for Democratic, but also Republican presidency and vice presidency seat? And it can be in terms of politics or entertainment value.
Entertainment value, okay. Let's see. My dream ticket right now for Republican.
Okay.
I would love to see Jeb Bush and Ann Richards.
Okay, Bill Richardson?
No, Ann Richards.
Ann Richards. The governor of who?
She used to be the governor of Texas.
Oh, Texas. Wasn't she a Democrat?
No, she's a Republican.
Oh, okay. But she was kind of actually pretty open-minded, I recall, right?
For certain things, yes. She was very tough on crime. Yeah. Very tough on crime.
But she was sort of known as a negotiator, right?
And for certain things, yeah. I really liked her. She had a lot, when they were talking about women president, I was like, why are they forgetting her? Why, they're picking Caitlyn and
according to Wikipedia, she is a Democrat. She is a conservative Democrat, of course, because you need to be in Texas, but she is a Democrat.
I did not know that. I thought she was a Republican.
Well, you would expect it, but yeah, I mean, she's a conservative Southern Democrat.
Okay, I like her.
Yeah. So I mean, but it's not impossible to have that cross-party ticket.
That's true.
So
that would be ideal, I think.
So you would like to see Jeb Bush.
Would be absolutely ideal at what this country needs.
And yeah, I agree. A kind of national reconciliation ticket would be really nice. Because that's what we need after 9/11, the war on terror, the war in Iraq, the economic crisis, and the Tea Party. That's what we need. But, so, in review, so you would say your dream Republican ticket would be Jeb Bush and Ann Richards.
Well, you know what? Let's call it a dream ticket since it is a crossover.
Yeah. So you don't even need a Democratic dream ticket either. So for me, what I would say,
if you give me more time to prepare, like next time you have me, I can give you, a dream team ticket for both.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Okay. And you know what? And more information is going to be available to us, as according to C-SPAN, the road to the White House has already begun. So there's going to be more and more speeches by year's end. So.
Yeah. And you know what's really, really sad is that the people that are in Congress now are going to be taking time off. They only served 153 days last year.
They all have jobs.
And they're going to take time off. Senators and congressmen that are in Congress now.
Yeah.
They worked 153 days last year.
Yeah,
that was it.
This is even more of a distraction for them. I mean, talk about people who are currently in Congress. Elizabeth Warren. We have Rand Paul. We have Michelle Bachmann. We have and Paul Ryan. So at least those people would be distracted from Congress, which already has a dismal record of actually progressing and keeping its people occupied.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. I mean, this election cycle, it is speeding up and it's enlarging and it's becoming more dramatic. And whether that's for good or that's bad, that's for bad. That is what it is. So we'll wrap up with my dream ticket. In terms, again, like I said, for Democratic Party, I'm not a Democrat. I'm a member of the Green Party. So unless Howard Dean is the nominee for the Democrats, I'm not going to vote for the Democrat, to be honest. But I am passionate about Howard Dean. And I would love to see him teamed up with Elizabeth Warren. And then on the Republican side, I'm not going to find anybody who necessarily I find ideologically satisfying. I will tell you, I would not want Ted Nugent or Donald Trump to be part of it at all.
Be realistic. Ted Nugent isn't going anywhere.
But people like Ted Nugent, though. There's a segment that finds him a very rough and tumble, kind of no BS kind of guy.
Yeah, but he's not politically. People know, they like him for entertainment, but he's not.
Yeah, so he'd play on Fox News, but he's not going to play at the ballot box.
Exactly.
Okay, I get that. So for my Republican dream ticket, I would love to see a Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin ticket. Because
Why would you want Sarah Palin?
Well, let me explain myself. I find both of them highly entertaining, highly fascinating women. I don't agree with them politically on pretty much anything, but I just am so fascinated by them. I can't really explain it. I think they are, I think they're just so different from me, and they see the world so differently that I can't help but look at what they say. Political side, let me ask you this. If my dream ticket came to fruition, would those people be elected into the White House? No.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
If I felt
it as something that potentially might happen.
If I felt seriously threatened that either one of them would actually make it into government, I don't think I would want them to run. But I think that they would be very interesting and very entertaining on the campaign trail. So that's why they would be my dream ticket. And then, in the 2012 election, I voted for Dr. Jill Stein, who was the Green Party's nominee, and I would love to see her run again. But I would also, now that I'm kind of have my own platform this time around, I'm going to make sure I do my best to let the American people know that there are more than just two options. That you have a choice. You may feel like you're disempowered and people bully you and, give you criticism and say you're not being realistic. No. The essence of democracy is doing what is not popular because you believe it's the right thing. And we're going to end. Welcome back to The Word. I must amend the headlines that I said earlier in the day because a few news stories have broken. So before I introduce my panel, I must read to you these. Neuroscientists have released that they are able to create false memories in mice. Sex researcher Virginia Johnson has died. Halliburton pleads guilty to destroying Gulf oil spill evidence. And most importantly to this program, it has been revealed that it is a Chinese firm that is in control of the proposed UK pornography filters. China is obviously a country that is infamous for its censorship, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Oh, come on. They don't ever censor anything. They're the most honest country in the world.
I know whose voice that is. Hey, Annika, how are you?
Good, how are you?
So we're going to start off today with something a little bit different, introducing a new segment called Annika's Angle. And Annika, I understand you have some pretty juicy stories for us today, right?
Well, juicy I don't know about, but ones I find quite interesting.
You're supposed to say these are the juiciest stories.
Is suing a Thai restaurant chain. You're never going to believe this, but they call this restaurant chain Hitler Fried Chicken. Oh, yeah. Hitler, World War II. One of history's greatest monsters. What they do is it looks like KFC, and it even has the logo HFC, and very similar, and it's basically Hitler's face. It's the same sepia tone, image.
Do they allow Jews into Hitler Fried Chicken?
I don't know. It's Thailand. I don't know how many Jews there are in Thailand, to be quite honest.
Is there some sort of veneration of Adolf Hitler in Thailand?
Because I could see where people might confuse it, because, again, the logo and all that looks very similar.
Come on.
HFC instead of KFC.
Would you ever confuse those two?
Personally, no, but I consider myself intelligent and informed, and I am incredibly informed as to the Holocaust because I lost half my family in it.
I would think that even Thai people would recognize Adolf Hitler's face. Or maybe that's why. Maybe that's the selling point.
He asked the guy behind the counter why it was called Hitler, and the guy behind the counter shrugged his shoulders and said the owner thought it was a good image. Yep. Yum Foods owns KFC, and they're a very, very large company.
Yeah.
They own Pepsi, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut. Yum Foods is a huge, huge corporate monster.
Yeah, it's one of the Fox 50 stock picks.
I found in one thing a photograph of a woman, standing outside a Ronald McDonald in the fetal position, and because apparently cartoon pandas, Teletubby, and Ronald McDonald have all been spotted around Bangkok, and this craze has seen more and more teenagers strutting around in T-shirts with cartoonish images of Hitler.
What?
So, yes, they're saying Nazi chic, which is a new trend.
Nazi chic?
It's one of the pink Teletubby with Hitler's hair and mustache and a swastika on top of its head.
Oh my God.
So, it's in the northern city of Chiang Mai in September of 11. A group of high school students stood up for Sport Day in homemade Nazi uniforms.
Are you okay?
Complete with toy guns and swastika armbands.
And we have no idea why this culture or the youth of this culture have an obsession with Adolf Hitler?
Apparently, this obsession has been growing since 2007. There were a bunch of students in a Bangkok school that had a Nazi-themed costume parade.
But that gets into the question of, should government interfere in this business? I don't know. But let's move on to Blackwater. So are you familiar with Blackwater?
Oh, very much so.
So, this article from InfoWars is talking about, a lot of different aspects of where Blackwater is. The first part that I want to highlight is it says the private military company, previously known as, no one really knows how to pronounce that one, XC Services. Before that, it was Blackwater USA and Blackwater Worldwide, has changed its name several times due to public scrutiny after the company was exposed for murdering 17 innocent Iraqi civilians in Nusra Square in Baghdad in September 2007. Do you remember when this happened?
I do.
Yeah, it was.
I remember very, very well.
What was your reaction to it?
I was disgusted, but at the same time, I could understand it. Anytime you've got mercenaries, even regular soldiers, there's going to be issues. When you are working with violence and guns and fear, there are going to be issues, especially mercenaries. Mercenaries are hired guns.
Indeed.
They work for whoever pays them.
Yeah, that's true.
They're tougher because they're not idealistic. They're not fighting for a cause. Mm-hmm. They're not fighting for their lives or their homes or their country. They are fighting for money.
Yeah.
And they can change sides depending on their company.
And whether it is the U.S. Army or, mercenaries, both of them have inculcated, at least we know on the battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, these sort of, demonization of the very people who they are there to allegedly help. So there's almost develops this hatred. You see the whole people as your enemy.
Well, yeah, we're supposed to help them, but they're the enemy. How do we help the enemy?
Well, they're not all the enemy, is the point.
No, but I'm saying, if you look at what we've been brought up since 9/11 to think, they're the enemy.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
Drilled into your head. They're the enemy. Kill the enemy.
Yes, you're right. They drill into their head that some kind of ideology, denigrating Arabs as, Eric Prince, who's the founder of Blackwater. When he was in his younger years, he traveled the world with his father, visiting many historical sites, such as the German concentration camp Dachau. However, the most influential...
Dachau. And I have family that died there. And I went there. It's not whatever. It's important.
I'm not saying it's not important. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't speak German, so...
No, I know. It's called Dachau.
Okay. However, the most influential event he witnessed was the Rwandan genocide, in which 500,000 people were massacred by another tribe in East Africa in 1994. After that, he got a low-level internship in the White House, but he soon left to work for an ex-freedom fighter, freedom fighter, against the Soviets in Afghanistan. Prince's motivation to help save lives has ironically led him to a career of training military combatants to kill. Obviously this company is notorious. If he had these life experiences, seeing the traumatic, violent events the way he did, why would he promote more violence in his life?
Being a mercenary does not mean that you're this evil whatever person. Sometimes these mercenaries are used to protect. If you look at
you do not have to be evil. You do not have to be evil to promote violence.
Right, but I'm saying what Blackwater and other companies like that do is the fact is there are people, there are Americans that have to work in some of these countries.
So, but that doesn't answer the question. After seeing violence, why do you think he would gravitate towards a company?
Because that's a...
Blackwater's presence and the presence of other mercenaries did not prevent mass slaughter from occurring in Iraq. If anything, I think a lot of people would say it exacerbated that.
There were mercenaries that helped us win the American Revolutionary War.
I would say that, if we need to rely on mercenaries, if we don't have enough troops, then we shouldn't even be going into a country then.
You know what? That's not something I disagree with, but the fact is, we go into countries for political reasons. Whether or not we have to... Look, we should have been getting out of that area. We're a superpower. We should have been in and out of there, no problem. Mm-hmm. But we're not.
That was the plan. Do you think that these events psychologically affected Mr. Prince to desire to build an army of his own?
I don't know if I call it an army of his own, but
Well, it is an army. Well, how is it not an army?
Because an army has a political agenda. He does not have a political agenda.
Well, I would say an army is just a collection of people, with a cause fighting for something, whether that be money or a country.
I don't agree.
Okay, let me reframe that question then. Do you think that these events psychologically affected him to make him desire to build his own fighting force?
Yes, that I would agree with, because, I think he wanted a force that he could have, so that, he could either go in to help rescue people or for people to hire.
See, you know what? The points you're making...
Because like you said, the whole thing with Rwanda, there were people that were stuck behind those lies.
Yeah.
And if, let's say I had enough money, I could hire Blackwater and say, go get my dad out. Or, that being just a... whatever. Go get my person out.
The points you are making are not without merit, and I can't just dismiss them offhand, but at the same time...
I'm being devil's advocate, too.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think, it is so hard for us, especially people who know about some of these atrocities that have been committed by Blackwater soldiers, to see the benevolent mission. It's hard to believe that.
A lot of these people, these soldiers that get hired by Blackwater, when you've been a soldier, you start to develop a God complex to an extent.
Oh.
You get a lot of people that join for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Oh, I can get a gun and go kill people. You do get a lot of people that are not psychologically balanced. I want to do X, Y, Z and get hired for this, when in reality they just want to kill people. Yeah,
so the fact that...
you do hear of the atrocities, but this was the biggest atrocity by a lot. But there are also atrocities committed by, look at Abu Ghraib, for example.
Yeah, and those were not Blackwater, that was American soldiers.
Willy-nilly, but how many people really died at Abu Ghraib that we covered up, that we don't know?
Yeah, and those were...
All we know is because there was a whistleblower.
And those were American soldiers, not mercenaries.
Oh, I think they can cover it up worse than the military. I think our military can cover it up a lot better than an organization like that.
For what reasons?
Because our government has a lot more resources to cover something up.
In terms of money?
All kinds of resources. We can gag order the press for some things. There's a lot of resources that the military has. Do I agree with what a lot of Blackwater does? Some I do, some I don't. Do I agree with their right to exist? Absolutely. If somebody I loved, I would want a team like Blackwater to be able to go in and try and extract.
So do you believe that I have a two-pronged question here. If you believe in their right to exist, do you think that mercenaries should have a place in American military operations, one? And number two, substantial government contracts are going to these corporations. Do you think that this government money should be diverted to organizations like Blackwater? Yeah, well, I think it goes beyond that. In some ways, the lines have blurred between our military and mercenary organizations.
Absolutely, they have. Because it's an accountability thing.
Yeah, but also...
It's plausible deniability.
Yeah,
and I think... It all comes down to plausible deniability. That's always going to happen.
I don't think mercenaries are necessary, because I don't think this maintenance of empire and this intervention and invasion is necessary. But, if we're looking in the context of the upkeep of the American empire, I can say, okay, yeah, they're probably necessary, but in a moral sense, I don't think that we should be employing. I don't think taxpayer money should be going to Blackwater.
Well, it isn't. Taxpayer money isn't. It's some of the taxpayer money going to mob-owned businesses.
Hold on.
Essentially.
Hold on.
It's a matter of who bids for a contract.
Okay, but listen to me for a second. If they are if they are rewarded with a contract, okay, what money are they paid with?
Well, but, what I'm saying is they're a company like anybody else.
But it is taxpayer money.
Well, okay, I guess you can call it that, yeah.
Well, what else would it be? I mean,
General Accounting Office.
What is that?
That's the office that approves all the contracts, everything.
Okay. Many people would say, well, there has been evidence of corruption, that not necessarily these are the best bids, necessarily.
I could see that starting under the Bush administration, maybe.
Okay. Well, let's move on with more pieces of this article. So according to, it cites reporter Jeremy Scahill's report titled Blackwater's Black Ops, published in The Nation magazine in 2010. Scahill ties the private defense company's work to several multinational corporations, such as Monsanto, Chevron, Walt Disney, and the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. Joseph Cofer Black, a former CIA official who now leads one of Blackwater's divisions, harbors a reputation of being particularly vicious. And then it talks about these corporate relations the company has, that it would include intelligence services to the biotech giant Monsanto through infiltration of animal rights activists, anti-genetically modified foods activists, and other potential oppositions. Wilson says they hired the company to keep track of public disclosure of its opponents. Do you think it is right for Monsanto to target private citizens who choose to go towards activism? Just focusing on Monsanto. So you're saying that because it's so common that it's justified in doing this?
I'm not saying it's justified. I'm just saying that's what they do.
Well,
All the companies
that's
do
what
it.
they do. But we're talking about. Let's go one step further. Do you think that Monsanto should be allowed to do this?
Well, technically, they're not allowed. None of them are. If they get caught, they get in trouble. Just because you know something, knowing something and being able to catch it and prove it are two different things.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So it goes on to say, this one division of Blackwater sought to become the intelligence arm of Monsanto by offering to provide operatives to infiltrate activist groups organizing against multinational biotech firms. Blackwater could have our persons actually join activist groups legally, this person said, and he acknowledged they'd be paid by Monsanto. So what can these animal rights activists do that makes Monsanto so threatened to bring in Blackwater?
I'm an animal rights activist and have been for years. I even, I did a protest, was in the, Congress. I'm very pro-animal. Those who know me know it. I rescue, I foster, some of these groups will go to a meat processing plant and put something in the, I can't remember the name of the group that did it, but they basically sabotaged the processing plant and cost, millions of dollars to this one company by destroying their equipment.
Do you think that the argument of animal rights justifies this?
Absolutely not. No matter how you feel, you work and you change the law.
Yeah.
You can't destroy that company's property.
Yeah.
I may hate what they do, but I got to find a way to do it legally.
See, I would say that if we move on from your point that there is this threat, why would you hire Blackwater? That seems like kind of like trying to shoot a squirrel with a machine gun. Isn't this wrong, though, to infiltrate these groups proactively before they even commit crimes?
No, because when you've got somebody that costs $1 million in advance,
but that's
like you said, like the article said, they infiltrate legally.
I don't think that it said legally.
That's the thing.
A few minutes ago, didn't you say that this industrial espionage is illegal?
If I want to infiltrate a group, all right, what's wrong with that? I can take money for that.
I see
There's
a lot
nothing
wrong with
illegal
that.
about that.
Because I think that is...
Ethically, it may be wrong, but there's nothing illegal.
I don't always see legal and moral as the same thing, and I think a lot of times they're not the same thing.
But the fact is, legal is legal. Do I find it immoral to do X, Y, Z? Sodomy. Sodomy is illegal in some places.
Indeed. And oral sex is illegal in Maryland.
Wait. And is it immoral? I don't think it's immoral.
Yeah.
But it's illegal. You see what I'm saying? Again, what we believe and this reality sometimes are different, and it's a fine line, and it sucks sometimes. But the laws are there for a reason. If we don't abide by the laws, we have chaos.
Well,
and chaos won't suit anybody.
But let's take that example that you just used. People have been disobeying these sodomy laws, and there has not been chaos.
Because we have so many laws that they don't all get enforced.
So there's chaos because of the law, you're saying?
Catching the murderer is more important than catching the sodomite.
Yeah.
So they prioritize some of the laws. The system is flawed.
That's true.
It's critically flawed. It sucks that we can't condemn it, you know. We can condemn it personally, but that's all we can do.
Yeah. Well, okay, what would you say to somebody who, was an animal rights activist and, is saying, well, this is not fair. We are just, public citizens. We're in this group fighting for a cause. We don't have the resources Monsanto does. Why should they be allowed to infiltrate our group when they have millions of dollars more than us?
Because that's capitalism, and that's just the way it goes. To screen our people better. To who we allow what access,
Yeah, but
Maybe
I think that's shifting. That's shifting the blame. But looking forward in terms of solutions to this impasse, how do you think that animal rights activists can deal with this?
Crazy people are like, we have to infiltrate and we have to be spies, and
Yeah,
and I
you're
think
right.
it damages their own credibility.
I guess I have more tolerance for these what you term stupid actions because, I see some of them as morally justified. And
what I have personal tolerance for versus what I agree with is different. And to be honest, I really think that there is such a thing as bad press, and there is such a thing as turning on.
But going back to the actions of these, like more radical groups, like I was saying, like I see them as justified because I think that they have a cause that is greater than that of the corrupt law. And the argument for that is the fact that in this country, laws are bought and purchased, by lobbyists. The law
that is very true.
Inherent in the system. The law is not going to be commiserate with the aims of a group like PETA or the Animal Liberation Front. That's going to be totally against them, So
but if they get enough grassroots support, if they let people know what they're doing and why they're doing it, I think it will grow and grow. Look how many animal lovers there are in this country. Yeah. Look at the crazy pet products. People buy there's nail polish for dogs and all kinds of this stuff. People love their animals. Groups want this. It's groups, and that's the thing. It's marketing. If they marketed what some of these other companies are doing in the right light, they would have no problem getting these laws passed. People would demand them along those lines.
In conclusion, so like I said, I am partial to a radical animal rights view, but at the same time, pragmatically, I completely agree the fact that while I may say, okay, I believe that action is justified, at the same time, you are absolutely right when you say that gives these companies more rhetorical weapons to say, oh, these guys are crazy. Look at this, what they did, So in a sense, you have to be smart about this.
Exactly.
Let's move on.
That's the only way to win against these big companies with the big resources. You have to play it's all a game.
Yeah, and you know what? I think there are some activists who are just so idealistic. They want to play in this sort of parallel game, but what they don't realize is, if you're fighting for something in the system of capitalism, you don't necessarily have to sell yourself out. But to get your cause advanced, you have to use those elements of capitalism that can help you for your advantage.
Exactly. Like if you know Monsanto is breaking a law, you need to advertise the hell out of
And
that.
use
You
our
need to
commercial
prove it,
media.
You need to document it.
Yeah.
You need to document it, you need to prove it, and you need to advertise that fact and get people so angry that you can get a majority of people to say, hey, wait a minute, these guys are doing that. That's wrong. Let's talk to our congressman. Let's talk to our senator. Let's put a stop to it. If public opinion sways to the point where it costs them money, they'll stop.
I agree.
That's what it comes down to.
I agree. And you know what? It sucks that activists will have to play that game, and, more radical people would have to play that game. But I think that they do need to realize that. They have to come to terms with the system that they are in. But that's hard for a lot of people because they say, well, my ideals are greater. And I think I would say to them, your ideals are great, but you know what? If you don't play the game like you're saying, you're never going to be able to implement your ideals.
Right. And at the end of the day, the fact is you want it to change. At the end of the day, that's what's important. You want to affect the change.
Yes.
If you go crazy and you come off as such a crazy person that, the general public turns their back on you, there's nothing you can do. You didn't affect any change.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
It's all the court of public opinion.
And you know what? I think that, that argument could be made for the Tea Party, that they really didn't affect as much change as they wanted to because they were so effectively either made themselves look deranged or were portrayed that way. They made it so easy.
Yeah. When they started out, I was an advocate for the Tea Party. I thought it was a great idea when they started out.
But by the time you
then
see...
they went a little too far and went nuts, and I was like, let's back off these.
I mean, they're not a group that any of us would want to associate with,
Not anymore. In the beginning, though, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, but then by, a number of years or a number of months later, you had people, comparing Hitler to, Obama and, holding swastikas and really outrageous
And the
things.
Tea Party really hasn't been around that much. It's only been a few years.
Yeah, it's true, but
they went from I thought, a good group to a bunch of nut jobs in a very short time.
Yeah, and I think the argument is out there. I'm not like a scholar of the Tea Party, and I think it's so soon that we don't know all the information about it. Like, we're gonna have to wait for history and posterity a little bit. But I think there's a convincing argument that it did start out as a libertarian grassroots organization, and by the time the 2010 midterms rolled around, they were a neoconservative organization bankrolled by millionaires. So I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I
think they sold out, to be honest.
They sold out.
Yeah, they saw the money. They saw the dollar signs, and there went the ideal.
And, they were on Fox News, and they got some candidates elected. But in the end of the day, because they they sold out so far, they didn't achieve anything. So I think what's important...
I think PETA sold out. I think PETA sold out big time.
Yeah, so the important thing is to strike a middle ground and a balance between keeping your ideals that are original to you, foundational, and then, playing the system, but not going too far to either side.
Right, and you don't go too far too fast either.
Yeah,
you have to build up slowly.
And you know what?
Established.
And the Tea Party, they did move really fast.
Oh my God, yes.
And they moved fast because they courted money and they courted media. This is a great discussion, and I enjoy this greatly, but let's continue going through this article. So, back to Blackwater, to bring it back. On September 3rd, 2010, the New York Times published a report stating Blackwater Worldwide has created a web of more than 30 shell companies or subsidiaries, in part to obtain millions of dollars in American government contracts. Since 2001, the intelligence agency, the CIA, has awarded up to $600 million in classified contracts to Blackwater. The transactions were financed by Bank of America, and 5 former senior Blackwater executives, including its former president, were facing weapons charges. Talking in terms of the executive who's at the head of this, we were talking about him, Prince. His last name is Prince. He has since left the country and relocated to Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. One of the reasons he gave was that there are no labor unions there, but Jeremy Scahill, the reporter, said it also has no extradition treaty with the United States. Well, no, so you don't think that he would potentially...
The fact is, if you're going to do a lot of business in the Middle East, and you're going to live over there, Abu Dhabi is a pretty damn nice place to be.
Yes, but it's also a nice place...
So, it's not like he's going to move to Venezuela if he's doing business in the Middle East.
Well, Blackwater wouldn't, be welcome in Venezuela, but...
But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
That's my point.
But I think an equally convincing argument is, it's also, Abu Dhabi is also a great place if you're running away from American law. And some of you, you ran and started a company that had major executives that are facing investigations by the State Department for weapons charges.
Because Blackwater is a black eye, and they want to bring it down.
But work with me here. So in American corporate culture, there is culpability at the top because they are responsible to shareholders. So usually who is the sacrificial lamb? The people at the top. Why is this situation different that he's able to just escape to Abu Dhabi? If this was like GE, if this was like Kraft Foods and some scandal erupted, it would be the person at the top who goes, not some, other middlemen.
Unless he potentially really didn't have any knowledge of that.
But I'm saying in a normal situation, even if these sacrificial lambs have nothing to do with it, they still get canned.
They were at the head of the subsidiary company. You can't expect the president of the guy who owned all the subsidiaries to, watch over them. That's why they are subsidiaries.
See, I have to say this. If you are running a multinational corporation that is responsible for deaths, whether they be justified or not, taking millions of taxpayer money and, basically legally trafficking in weapons, I think you need to have that accountability. I think you need to ensure that this type of stuff does not happen. And you know what? I would hold you accountable if you are fostering a culture of corruption. So I do I hold those people accountable, but yeah, I hold him accountable too, and I think the law should.
Well, again, I worked at a company that had more subsidiaries and sister companies than you know what to do with. They were very large arms dealer, trafficker.
This goes to the concept of too big to fail, which usually applies to banks. But in this case, a corporation that has this much consequence and is receiving this much public money and is this consequential in American foreign policy should not be too big to hold its leader accountable.
Do I agree with you? Yeah, but the fact is, that's what happens.
Yeah, and I'm not disputing that's what happens, but I'm just saying that this is a special case because I know if this was a normal company, and by that I mean not one that's getting contracts or not one that has this mercenary army, this would not, you see every year tons of Wall Street CEOs, founders, leaders, off with their heads if a scandal comes out. This is the exception. This is getting a different situation than most companies get.
Okay, but explain to me this scandal you're referring to. There was one big incident where some people went nuts and killed people. Should be held personally accountable?
Well, let me just bring up some of the other scandals, and we can talk about them.
Okay.
So in terms of Blackwater, zooming before this incident in 2007, Blackwater was sued by the families of 4 contractors killed in Fallujah in March 2004. The families, blah, 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 blah. Then they were called to testify before the House Government Reform Committee in 2007. I'm not done. I'm not done.
Maybe because of negligence.
I'm not done though.
I'm sorry. Come on now.
I'm not done yet. There is a list of these things that makes this very sketchy company. Let me continue. Okay, so two former employees claimed that Blackwater defrauded the federal government on a security contract given after Hurricane Katrina. A federal judge, blah, blah, blah. There was a civil lawsuit alleging that Blackwater defrauded the federal government of money when billing it for work in Iraq and Afghanistan. And then in terms of litigation over actions in Iraq, the Center for Constitutional Rights filed a suit against Blackwater under the Alien Tort Claims Act on behalf of injured Iraqi families. And that was during the Baghdad shootings. Then in 2009, another lawsuit was filed alleging that Blackwater employees shot and killed 3 members of an Iraqi family who were traveling from the airport to the city on July 1st, 2007.
Okay, great. I can file a lawsuit for whatever I damn feel like. That doesn't make it a righteous claim. Were there any of these cases that were actually tried, convicted? I mean, any of them?
Yes. There was a case called Helvinston et al. Versus Blackwater Security. Also, the Justice Department did bring criminal charges against 5 Blackwater employees. So many of these have reached trial.
But again, see,
And the Iraqi government expelled them.
I don't know. It's hard. It's really hard to say whether or not he should be personally accountable for these things. The president of the company?
Okay, well that's...
No.
What about all these Iraqis that have been killed?
I mean, I don't know. I am playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
You know, do I think that, that they probably have some accountability? Absolutely. Do I know how much? No. It's kind of all up in the air, But in general, I really, I'm more agreeing. I think Blackwater has accountability. Whether he personally has accountability, I don't know.
So you
I need to learn more about each incident.
But
before I could say,
okay,
he needs.
And I get that. But in an abstract situation, doesn't the founder and the leader, you have good things that come with being the leader. You get millions of dollars, but you have this downside in the fact that at the end of the day, you must take responsibility for your organization.
That's like telling, when you are that big, you cannot take personal accountability. You can't.
You know what? If your organization is that big to the fact where it's out of control of any of your executives and no one seems to be able to rein in these repeated incidents, then I think that you shouldn't be that large, or you should not be receiving taxpayer money.
What needs to happen is that the board of directors needs to oust him and get somebody in there who does know what they're doing.
Well, I believe that he should be brought to justice.
I think that's a crock of crap.
Well,
that's inflammatory.
Listen, but what am I trying to say? Say he did travel to Abu Dhabi because it was an environment of impunity where he could escape justice. Who would admit that? Of course he's going to say something else. He's the head of a corporate company.
I understand that, but I think that the only reason the journalist brought it up was to inflame the reader. What are the numbers? How many people have died?
Okay.
What are the actual numbers?
Okay. Give me 1 second. Because it was not included in this one article.
Exactly. That's what makes me curious. Infowars.com?
Well, okay. You can't say something about a website from its name. I will admit that I do get articles from InfoWars, but it is sometimes a notoriously unreliable resource. However, Jeremy Scahill is not.
Okay. Like I said, it just sounds a little off.
Well, what sounds off about it?
It was, I hate Blackwater, blah, 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 blah. If you look at the title, The Mysterious New Owner of, but yet they were trashing Prince the whole time. So the article really has nothing to do with the new owner of Blackwater Worldwide. Nothing.
It's a misleading headline, but I mean, but that I don't think that invalidates the information that is in here or the arguments presented.
I don't think this particular article was well done.
Okay. Well,
Not this particular one.
InfoWars is fairly shoddy, and I don't have the numbers about Blackwater. I'm just getting numbers.
Whoa. You know what I just realized? They took bits and pieces of Scahill's report. The headline and the article have nothing to do with each other.
So the article finishes up, it seems unlikely that multinational corporations such as Monsanto need to hire veteran war assassins to protect themselves against harmless grassroots organizations.
Veteran war assassin? Who's the war assassin? This is just an inflammatory trash, right?
People whose job it is to kill Iraqis. Well, that's what their job is. That's what their job is in practice. You're occupying this nation.
If these people really wanted to go on killing sprees, there would be a lot more dead. A lot more dead. Because these guys all have automatic weapons. They don't go around just randomly assassinating people.
And I'm not saying that either, but I think that in a larger context, this organization served in the past tense, oppress these people and, bring this almost military regime upon them.
No, I don't think so in the slightest. I think that's a little naive.
You think it's naive? I think that's realistic.
I think Blackwater's worked for places like Disney and Royal Caribbean.
Well, I'm not talking about when they're dealings with Walt Disney. I'm talking about Iraq.
I understand that, but Iraq is one little portion of what they do. They don't only work in Iraq.
Iraq is the reason...
They work in places like Mexico City where kidnappings are rampant. They work all over the world.
Iraq is the reason that any of us even know what Blackwater is. It is pivotal to understanding their role in history.
They had a bad incident in Iraq, and that's how we know what they are.
Have multiple...
And are they paying for that? Absolutely.
I think they should.
Fuck no. That's your moralistic sense. And yeah, absolutely they should suffer, but they're never going to, and that's life.
See, I would disagree with you in the sense that they never will. I think if the system under the system, they never will. But I do believe change is possible.
Right, but by the time it happens, these people will be, long past, long gone. Change is absolutely possible, but it takes time.
Well, I hope for something better than that. But I think that, well, I don't know. Let's go. I feel like a future is possible where these people will be held accountable. But
absolutely. In the future, absolutely.
Well, we need to wrap up this article. So that was a very vibrant conversation. I think, in summation, I think it's an example of we don't disagree on most of the reality of the situation. We're just emphasizing different points. And I think I am more idealistic. I don't think that's naive. I think people would say I'm naive, but I think I'm just holding accountable Blackwater.
No, you're very idealistic, and I totally believe, and I respect that, and that's kind of what I love about you.
Let's take a break, and then we are going to come back and finish by discussing the royal baby as media phenomenon. Who was behind this saturation of the royal baby in the world media? We will talk about, we're going to now discuss the royal baby. However, well, first I need to update the listeners on some news that it's broken within the past segment. Apparently it has come out that the driver of the infamous Spanish train that dramatically crashed bragged on Facebook about going too fast in his train before this crash happened. Also, the country of Tunisia has erupted in protest after the killing of an opposition leader.
He bragged about that?
Because I think they're investigating him now, so they uncovered it. But this is from Huffington Business, United Kingdom. It's entitled "The Royal Baby: Greatest Product Launch Campaign Britain Has Ever Seen?" ? It says, from the mass-market lifestyle brand Clarence House, The brand's PR pixies arranged a year-long campaign incorporating a wedding-based stunt, a boat party, several celebrity world tours, and a much-hyped mystery unveiling. The whole thing is enough to make an old hand like me exhausted, but will it pay off? I think it did pay off in spades. The very specific way that the royal family went about handling the pregnancy, the wedding, and the birth of the baby with the media really increased their credibility, whether that was for good or for bad.
Come on, look, please. You know what? These poor kids were so pressured into having a kid fast, it's not even funny. Because, the queen is old. It's her 60s, it's her diamond jubilee, blah, blah, blah. It's perfect to get it all in the same year. How great is that?
Another story has just broke from the Russian news agency RIA Novosti. And I bring this up not because it's necessarily consequential, but because it is strange. Apparently, a woman in the far eastern Siberian region of Russia is suspected of cooking her baby.
Doesn't surprise me. I mean, there are crazy people everywhere.
And that's awful. Cooking your baby, oh my God. The royal baby would not be roasted, I don't believe.
No, because there would be people that would stop that because she's never alone.
Kate, whatever her title, Duchess, whatever, she wouldn't even have an opportunity to roast her baby.
None. I mean, yes, it's a big money maker, and it's not that the monarchy's making any money from this. The people that are making money are all the private people that are selling all this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And the media.
That are making and selling it.
Yeah, the media.
The media.
The article goes on to say, following the official launch announcement, Twitter action reached 25,300 tweets per minute. Clarence House kept a handle on the conversation. I don't know. They also arranged supporting tweets from brand-appropriate influencers, including the Daily Mail and the British monarchy. The brand will also be pleased that they have ironed out creases in their social media machine. Their 2011 royal wedding stunt actually received a strikingly negative reception among British tweeters.
Wait, what stunt was that? I don't understand what they're talking about. What's the royal wedding stunt?
They're referring to it as a stunt because it's a staged media event.
Oh, please, come on. Of course it's a staged media event. They're freaking royal.
Just saying, a lot of royals get married under the radar, like ones we don't know about.
Right, but the vast majority of them don't, especially the British royals.
I don't think you can say that at all. There's no way to compare Henry VIII to this. There was no mass media back then. Yeah.
There was just as much then as there is now. That's what I'm saying. Just different kinds of branding.
I guess. I mean, I can agree with you, but I think it's just comparing incompatible situations.
But what I'm comparing is that it's an event. It's not like it's a staged event, no matter how you slice it.
So blah blah blah. This article goes on to say that this organization, Clarence House, has run a PR campaign which stands as a benchmark for taking advantage of a weakened media. Now with newsrooms collapsing and commentary fracturing across cyberspace, Clarence House has realized the media has a use for the brand values its products offer. Pappy nationalism and soft focus shots of brunette women in dresses, aka fluff journalism.
Yeah, but you know what? Fluff journalism is 90% of what's out there now.
I don't think so. But I think it's
newsrooms collapsing? I don't believe that's true. Only print newsrooms. Broadcast getting puffier by the day? Absolutely, because fluff.
Well, I would say that it's not just print. I mean, CNN even has closed many world bureaus in the past few decades, or the past decade. Many of these news organizations' operations have become much more skeletal. One of the last quotes I want to bring from this, on BBC Breakfast this morning, the Republican, so that means anti-monarchy, campaigner Graham Swift claimed that Visit Britain, which I guess is some organization, predicted a near zero change in tourism revenues. So, from this. So I would...
People don't visit England to see the royals because they don't ever get to see the royals.
Royal baby enthusiasts like my mother would say that there is a lot of positive economic benefit from all this pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, Americans are watching TV, so the advertisers, have that.
Yeah, I don't even think it's. But when they watch Fox News about the royal baby, that doesn't benefit Britain. But I don't think that any sort of economic claim to the well-being of England justifies this. Yeah.
I don't think there's any significant income from this.
So why do people still try to justify their consumption of the royal baby phenomenon using these hard numbers, or what they think are hard numbers?
Because it's a guilty pleasure and people don't want to admit it.
Yeah, that's what I think. You know what? My problem is not necessarily that people want to learn about royal baby. I think you should learn whatever you want. But people are acting like this is actually important.
You're learning about the royal baby because you want to learn about the royal baby.
Like my mom is basically trying to, and I'm not saying my mom is representative of everyone, but I think she's representative of casual news viewers, And she's trying to pass her interest off as, this is, a very serious economic benefit to England. No, it's not. This is a puff piece.
What it is it's your mom and people like her saying that, I really like this royal baby, but how do I make it sound like I'm not liking the royal baby?
Like this is an academic topic,
I want to like the royal baby, but I feel guilty for liking the royal baby. How do I feel less guilty?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, it's going to bring the economy to England. Yay, go royal baby. That's what it is. It's because, again, we're too intelligent to be happy about the royal baby for any other reason.
Yes. Thank you for saying it.
We're intelligent people. Why would we be happy for people who had a kid? Mm-hmm. Let's justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I did. It's going to bring in money. Okay, well, we like the kid. I mean, and like I said, I am not calling your mom dumb. I am not calling anybody anything. I am just saying that sometimes in this world, it is easier to justify our guilty pleasures.
I totally
I'm not watching Kim Kardashian because I like Kim Kardashian. I'm watching it as a look into sociological American behavior. That's what it is.
Kim Kardashian is a very significant American these days.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Oh, I totally get it.
If it's a guilty pleasure, I'm going to find a way to justify it.
Well, I totally
I'm watching Honey Boo Boo because I want insight into the world of pageantry. Please. And I am not saying I watch Honey Boo Boo because I don't.
Lies.
But
Lies.
No, I don't have TV, so I couldn't watch it if I wanted to. So there. But anyways, that's my point. We will do anything in this world to justify our guilty pleasure.
Well, I have another question that is in that same vein. I don't hear a lot of people, or as many people, attempting to justify their consumption of just average American celebrity culture in terms of economic growth.
Because Americans are dumb.
Well, you just said we're smart people.
No. Your mother is a smart person. The average American is dumb.
Okay.
Okay? And look at what we tend to consume. And that will tell you right there. Mm-hmm. Okay, the average American is dumb. And you know what? Everybody who hates the fact that I say it, write me an email and explain why you're smart. Okay? We have kids that can't tell the difference between Y-O-U-R, Y-O-U-R-E, part of where this comes in.
I kind of feel like there's a certain element of America that's always been like this.
A certain element, and it seems like that element is growing. And it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. We have the best collegiate system in the world, but our primary and secondary education sucks.
Yeah.
Every other country in the world, they learn more than one language. Every other country. We don't.
Well, we don't feel, I'm not going to say we don't have to, but we don't feel like we need to because we act as the hegemon in the world.
Yeah, we're America now. We're cool. We don't need no fucking stinking language. And that's exactly what's the reason that America is eventually going to go down in flames.
Yeah.
Because we act like that.
Well, let me ask you the question.
We act like we are the be-all and end-all of the world.
I think you have good points, but you didn't exactly answer the question, which is, why do people justify this consumption of the royal baby in terms of economic growth, but not celebrities?
The royal baby is not your average celebrity.
Yeah, that's true.
The royal baby is born to this life. And I think that's the other thing. How many times are little girls taught when they're little, you could be a princess when you grow up?
Yeah. Yeah,
You
it's
know?
like a fairy tale.
That's what we're taught. The fairy tale. The fairy tale is the royalty.
And you know how many times I heard the phrase fairy tale during that effing royal wedding? Like, that's really what they were selling, was a fairy tale.
Absolutely.
You know?
Because that's what the monarchy is. Everybody knows the monarchy has nothing to do with reality. We are the fairy tale.
Yeah.
And we want the fairy tale.
But I feel like some people take this actually seriously.
There are, like I said, there are some dumbass people out there who do take it seriously. But, you know, hopefully they are not listeners of the word, or if they are, they're learning something every once in a while.
I hope so. I would hope that somebody's learning something from this. But I guess I just don't understand the American enthusiasm about this, because it's like we fought a revolution to rid ourselves of monarchy. Why would we think the royal baby?
That's the point. We have this superiority.
I don't think that that's the attitude out there. I think that people are disconnected from our history as a nation that historically opposed monarchy. I think that people are actually enthralled, and I think they're buying into this whole idea.
No, I do agree with you. I do agree with you. I think that that's pretty much what it is. You know, it's the little girl told she could be a princess.
Yeah, it's not like,
You know,
laughing, because I don't know anybody besides me who personally is actually, I mean, I'm not making fun of them, so it's not even me, but I don't know anybody who's following it who's making fun of them.
No, you're right. I was just kind of goofing around, but that's
that's funny, but
it's the fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's the fairy tale world that we all want to be a part of. We all want to be a prince or a princess and have the money and the coaches and they're built into a legacy like that. I think we are very envious that they have that, and we all secretly want it.
Like, I don't understand why people give them credit for inheriting something.
You're just jealous.
So we've seen major stories such as the porn censorship in the UK break this week, but subsequently they were ignored. So why is the royal baby favored as a news item?
Well, because the royal baby is a happy thing. Nobody can complain that having a new royal baby sucks. That's why. It's that simple.
Yeah, that's true. It's kind of a
Nobody
uniting
can
thing.
complain about it. There's nothing bad about the child being born. Nothing.
No. Yeah. I say bad things about the way the media is obsessed with it.
He was just born.
I mean,
That was it.
yeah. I mean, you're totally right. I mean, a lot of people would go to bat for this poor defenseless baby. Who besides me is gonna go to bat for porn? You know, like.
Hey, I go to bat for porn any day of the week.
Well, that's why you're on the show. Okay, do you think that it hurts the news as a whole for events manufactured by PR firms to report it as news?
News is what we make it to be. We choose what is news.
So
What
it
do you think
doesn't.
about it?
So you're saying that it does not hurt the concept of news?
No, it does not hurt the concept of news.
I mean, that's subjective, you know.
You can look it up. What is the actual dictionary.com definition of news?
I can tell you what media theorist Michael Parenti and also Steve Postman, Neil Postman, who wrote about these things. Basically, they say exactly what you say. It is the news is, number one, what is reported. Number two, what journalists find significant. Number three, what people find significant. So royal baby is news, basically.
The royal baby is news because we have chosen to make the royal baby news.
I agree with you. Do you think the
It is
news...
news because we chose to make it that.
Do you think the news legitimacy is eroded when the royal baby gets so much coverage?
Oh, no, not at all. I think the legitimacy of news has been eroded because of the nature of the legitimacy of news.
So,
You
yeah.
know, we've had so much BS talked about as news that nobody cares anymore.
I do.
Okay, most people don't care anymore.
And on that note,